All right, guys. Looks like we are live here at O-1. Hey, guys. Today we're going to be talking about how society is manufactured with some references to things going on in the news. I will see you on the other side of the intro. Hi, welcome everybody. This is All-1, and my name is Bill. Thanks for being here, whether watching now live or later. real quick with some things. I obviously haven't been streaming for a little bit for the last week or so. So my apologies for that. I had someone reach out to me and say something, I wish you could post something if you can't stream. I try to sometimes make a video unless I have more subs. YouTube doesn't allow me to make a notation, but of course, not everyone watches on YouTube. Links in the description, by the way. Other platforms I am on, including Rumble, which we are live on right now, Entropy, which is a free speech platform. There is no record of what you say, it will be deleted, and you can donate there. And we are also live on DLive. So, and I do believe today I forgot to put the links in the Rumble, but it should be re-uploaded once the stream is done, anyways, via the re-upload feature from YouTube. So hopefully it will be there. Otherwise, I'll go back and put it in. But yeah, my daughter, my baby girl, got really sick. What, Friday evening, Saturday evening? I forget when it was. It woke me up in the middle of the night. She was throwing up all day. And then finally, toward the end of the night, she stopped. The next evening, that is. But then my wife got sick all of a sudden. So, and I didn't stream last week because it was Easter, and we didn't end up doing anything because the baby was sick. But yeah, my wife got really sick. I actually had to call in work Tuesday, and then I wasn't feeling so well myself on Wednesday. I didn't throw up or anything, but I just had no energy. Like, to even get up off the couch was a was a chore. So, and I didn't feel well. I had no appetite or anything. So we didn't stream on the Ends Justify the Meme. So that's what's been going on. But what I'm going to do, based on the suggestion, is I'm going to make announcements on the Discord. The Ends Justify the Memes has a Discord. If anyone wants it, I can put it in the chat. But for now, most of you who watch regularly are part of it. But that's where I'll make announcements on both this channel, All Minus One, and about the Ends Justify the Memes. And I will put links in there. And, you know, we've been wanting to do to work with the community a lot on both channels. And it's just a matter of time, guys. If this is one of those things where I had, a good amount of income coming in separately or from you all, I could just stream and focus on this all the time, which I would love to do, actually. But it's just not in the cards at the moment. I'm gonna have to work at this for a while, for a few years probably, before I get a big enough audience. I can say this, that I am slowly gaining subs on this channel. It actually ticked down for a bit. YouTube probably stripped them away. Maybe people didn't like me anymore. I don't know. But I've gained a few subs since. And I did have a little bit of time during that to do some clips from these, and I'm going to continue to do that. But yeah, anyways, that's the extent of that. I I really appreciate y'all bearing with me, and you just have to realize, like, this cannot be a full-time gig for me unless I have a very large audience, a large enough audience at least, to support me. They're you got to prioritize in life, right? So I want to do this, but there's a bunch of other things I want to do too with my life, including spend time with my family and work, which I didn't do for a long time, at least in the capacity of working for other people. So yeah, again, my apologies. That's enough of that. I'm not going to assalamu alaikum, spook. Not going to go on about it forever, but yeah, I'll start doing that. I'll start putting it in the Discord, as I was saying. So, guys, let's get into the subject matter. And we're 10 minutes in. It doesn't help that I have a 4-minute intro video. But I wanted to talk about how societies are modern societies are manufactured largely. And given the time, I was going to talk a lot about Baudrillard today, and simulacra and simulation, and that Baudrillard is one of the useful postmodernists, and at least he was not totally praising Marx, and he was right about a lot of things. We're talking about all the way back in the 1960s, predicting how our society was going. And I believe that the left understands his beliefs and is using it, right, to manipulate the public. But long before Baudrillard was around and all that, this guy named Edward Bernays wrote a book about propaganda and how to manufacture societies. That is, how to manufacture a consensus, or when I say a society, I'm talking about a larger thing in like our morality and the way that we see the world and what we are for and against as far as the population goes. Because, I mean, if you guys haven't paid attention, you haven't witnessed this, I certainly have. The population tends to be for or against anything that the media says or the Democrat Party says, because the Democrats are the institutional power in the United States, and they have been for over 100 years. It was their big revenge of the Sith, if you would, after the Civil War, to gain power and control of every single institution. And to this very day, we hear people say, "Oh no, the Democrats are the good guys." And I didn't play it on the show, but I considered it a while back. Fox News had did a little piece where they interviewed some people out of college about free speech and some other stuff, and or abortion rights and the Democratic Party. And these people have left the party and they're like, "Oh, I won't vote for Republicans," which is an absurd notion. Like, I don't like Republicans generally either, but to say I wouldn't vote for one is a whole nother thing. No, I won't vote for a Democrat because I know how they operate. Most of the Republicans operate the same, but there are people who are liberty-minded folks, liberty candidates, candidates who want to do things right, folks like Rand Paul, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, Madison Cawthorn. I feel like Matt Gaetz is pretty good in that aspect. Although I'm not still sure what's going on with his trouble from his little extortion scandal from the other year, but we'll see how that goes. But there are some. Thomas Massey is another one that comes to mind. There are some good people in there that are actually trying to make the system work and obey its own rules. But for the most part, that's a small minority, and it's a small minority of Republicans. And what you have to understand is this right here: propaganda. Propaganda is the tool that is used and has been used for centuries to manipulate and mold people's emotions, but especially in the 21st century. And part of this is the climb of social media and the novelty of it, and how, as a species, we have to understand how to use this technology appropriately. And for a long time, I was a bit of a social media junkie myself. Again, with the novelty of it, I thought those things were kind of really stupid in the beginning. And then I kind of, used Facebook as a news aggregate. And then I got into a lot of chats with people and whatever else. But it's also a big time suck, and it's not real. Now, it doesn't mean that real things aren't happening there, and those people aren't real. A lot of them aren't. A lot of them are bots. But it's not real in the same way that interacting with a person face to face is. And even here, as I stream, it's much similar. Now, I'm giving you me. I'm giving you an authentic person. I'm giving you my real thoughts. I don't filter a lot of myself here. But regardless, the interaction can only be so much. But I do prefer this because you can at least see my face, right? You can hear the intonation of my voice. You can hear the cadence of how I speak, and you can make a decision. Versus if I type something, you can put any tone you want to it. And this is a very important thing because these social media companies, via your phones, where's my phone at? Not that I need to show you what a smartphone is, but via your little cybernetic device, because you're basically a cyborg being on this thing all the time, they're tracking you. They're tracking your habits. They're tracking what you buy. They're tracking what you are thinking about buying. They're tracking you when you go to the bathroom and make a bowel movement. They're tracking you constantly. They know what you eat. You think that they cannot manipulate you. You are wrong. They are gathering data on the regular to ensure that they can provide you with the product that will emotionally satisfy you in the moment. Now, it doesn't mean that it's good for you. It doesn't mean that there is a great long-term benefit for your health or your well-being, right? It just means that it will satisfy your emotions in the moment. You know, I can liken that to something as powerful. I'll put it that way because it is powerful as having an affair, right? That affair may be emotionally satisfying at the time, but the second, third, fourth, fifth order consequences of that with your wife, your children, maybe your work, the economic consequences of lawyers and psychologists and all these other things that go along with that, or spiritual counseling, whatever it may be, you know, it's not really good or beneficial for you. It is in the moment, perhaps, because you know you got your you got your instant gratification and your you know temporary feeling of ecstasy, but in the long run, it's not, and we have to understand this. Bill, the time you spend researching for every separate episode, you particularly still are a social media junkie. Fair enough, Spook. Fair enough, but with that, dude, I'm actually most of my social media intake is via video and audio. I'm listening to it while I'm doing other things. Now I see certain articles and I will look them up and search for them, and we'll talk about some things today that I've come across that maybe you haven't heard a lot about unless you're in certain spheres. But yeah, that's just because I'm obsessed with what's going on in the world. But I mean, I get what you're saying. It's gonna be a 1 hour, 2 hour stream. I have no idea, man. I don't have anywhere to be. It might be a 3 hour stream today. It's hard to say. But before I get into it, let me check the chats elsewhere over on Rumble and Entropy. Got Matt over on Entropy. Fever, disorientation, achiness, cough, strep, runny nose, but very energetic. LOL. I assume you were sick too, Matt. Well, I had a cold, if you recall. If you watched, you know, I was on Sniper Stream like twice in the last 2 weeks. But that is Staff Sergeant Sniper. If you guys don't know him, he was on the Unjustified the Memes with us the other week. So I've had this cold, and I had that the lingering effects of the cold for about a week after, like just the drainage of the nose and the cough and all that. I felt perfectly fine. Other than that, it was annoying. And as soon as that went away, I got, you know, the stomach bug, which fortunately did not make me throw up, because I really hate that. I don't know who likes puking, but yeah. Anyways, guys, so I have a clip for you here real quick. It's kind of a preface to all of this that we're going to get into. And it's from a channel called Even at the Doors. Now, this gentleman is a Christian, and his content is always Christian content, and it's always about the return of Christ, essentially the apocalypse, the revealing of the things to come, and what's going on in our world. So I don't check him out very often anymore. I haven't watched him in a while, but I happened to catch this the other day, and he was talking about, I believe the name of the clip is what is a conspiracy theorist? It's like an hour-long video. I clipped a couple minutes of it. So let's watch this real quick, and you know, we'll get into it.
Able to question power structures.
Oh, that must have that was the end of it. Sorry, guys. For freedom to be genuine cannot be either qualified or conditioned to any religious or political system. To restrict freedom is to betray it.
Pope Francis met US Secretary of State Antony Blinken in the Vatican on Monday. It's not entirely clear what the pair discussed.
So the New York Post editorial board accusing the federal government of using social media giants to censor Americans who oppose the president's policies.
This is a world pandemic. It's a 1 in 100 year event. So you can expect that we will have transmission from time to time, and that's just the way it is. We've got to accept that this is the new world order.
Why don't you tell us the World Health figures that 99.4% of cases around the world today are mild?
A crisis being used to further encroach on human rights without any analysis, and the easy acceptance by a lot of TDs that this is happening.
Authorities in China take harsh measures, working to control the country's emerging virus outbreaks. Residents reportedly sealed inside their homes. That's if they don't comply with harsh pandemic restrictions. The gate of a neighborhood is welded shut soon after a confirmed virus case was discovered there.
This, guys, is not acceptable in Western countries, but we've been doing things just as bad. And imagine right now what's going on with China. Imagine when the midterms come, what we might be entering back into. We'll see. We'll see. We'll talk about some of that stuff too. Again, this is the manufacturing of our society, right? Excuse me. You cannot just let people live and think and believe what they wish. You cannot allow them to have free speech. You have to curate everything. You have to be a gatekeeper so that they believe in what you say is the appropriate narrative.
Residents living in some city high-rises heard cries for help.
There will be no return to the old normal for the foreseeable future. I repeat, there will be no return to the old normal for the foreseeable future.
A number of years ago, a young preacher labeled myself a conspiracy theorist because of my biblical position on prophecy. What exactly is a conspiracy theorist? Who first coined or popularized the phrase? Now, I'd like to give a disclaimer. This study is only for people who are truly seeking God and want to know what's going on in the world. And as I encourage on all times, please research everything you see in this study.
My fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Here is a flash from the Associated Press, Dateline Dallas. 2 priests who were with President Kennedy say he is dead of bullet wounds.
Good evening as we come on the air in the West tonight, and we begin with that breaking headline, those top secret JFK files. The president tweeting they were coming today, the final batch of classified documents from the assassination of President Kennedy.
Who killed John F. Kennedy? The commission answers unequivocally, Lee Harvey Oswald. Was Oswald acting alone, or was he a member of a conspiracy? The commission answers he acted alone.
But even from the day the president was shot, most Americans had their doubts.
So this is important, right? Because in this time, in the 1960s, Americans had their doubts about who assassinated the president, how he was assassinated, and it was okay. You didn't have everyone in the media going around saying, oh, you're a bunch of conspiracy theorists. Now, if you talk to most people today, they're going to give you the official account because that narrative is what won. But it was very acceptable and understandable for people to have these beliefs. It still is, folks. It still very much is if you talk to the average person. But if you talk to the elitists, the Mika Brzezinskis of the world, you know, the little viral clip from back during the Trump days when she said that it's our job to tell you what to think has been going back around. I've been seeing it a lot on the YouTubes and a lot of streams. Like, she believes that. She was raised that way. Her father is Zerbigniew Zerbinski, Big Z. He's a very influential figure. Go look him up if you don't know. He is part of our globalist, domination. He probably still works for the government behind the scenes, much like Henry Kissinger does.
Documents are withheld by the FBI, the CIA.
Intelligence agencies did all the wrong things if they were looking for conspiracy.
On Friday, November the 22nd, 1963 at 12:30 p.m., an event took place in the United States of America that was to send shockwaves around the whole world. The youngest elected and the 35th President and the Commander-in-Chief of the United States of America, John Fitzgerald Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas, Texas at the age of 46. His vice president, who succeeded him, Lyndon B. Johnson, put together a committee to investigate the assassination. When it was completed, it was called the Warren Commission. But there was a very big problem with this report. It was compiled way too quickly without a very thorough investigation, and half of the American people were not buying it. They did not believe that a lone gunman acted alone. They believed that other players were involved who the powers that shouldn't be were protecting. So the Central Intelligence Agency, better known as the CIA, sent out a telegram, for they caught wind that many people were accusing them of being behind the assassination of JFK. And anyone who thought outside of the mainstream report or the mainstream narrative, as you can vaguely see at the bottom of this now declassified dispatch, they labeled as conspiracy theorists. The New York Times were able to get a copy of these overseas cabled messages dated to April 1st, 1967, which are now declassified, and it documented 10 years later in an article dated to December 26, 1977, that a CIA document, recently declassified under the Freedom of Information Act, provides a detailed account of at least one instance in which the agency mustered its propaganda machinery to support an issue of far more concern to Americans and to the CIA itself than to the citizens of other countries.
So it says, the CIA document recently declassified under the Freedom of Information Act provides a detailed account of at least one instance in which the agency mustered its propaganda machinery to support an issue of far more concern to Americans and to the CIA itself than to citizens of other countries. Meaning that the CIA took it upon itself to manufacture an issue, to propagate a belief in it, right? And to create a narrative to focus on its own agendas.
Conspiracy theories, the cable went on, have frequently thrown suspicion on our organization. For example, by falsely alleging that Lee Harvey Oswald worked for us. The aim of this dispatch is to provide material for countering and discrediting the claims of the conspiracy theorists.
And it doesn't matter if Oswald worked for them or not. None of that matters. The CIA has done plenty that has been admitted to over the decades. We know that they have tried to upend governments. We know for a fact part of our deal right now in the Ukraine is because of CIA involvement. We know that the Arab Spring happened. That was CIA involvement. Obviously, Libya is gone. CIA involvement. And Iran, right? We deposed their democratically elected government and put in a puppet show. And now we have horrible relationships, a horrible relationship with the Iranian government. They are seen as one of our enemies. And in fact, the Iranians do more as enemies to us than Russia ever does, including despite what the manufactured consensus is. If you look at the actual data, the Russian bot farm narrative is like minuscule. You're talking about like 50 bots at some point, or 50 hackers or whatever that were trying to manipulate things here, whether it be elections or whatever else. The Iranians had several hundred. The Chinese had several thousand. So let's get our priorities straight. But we're not worried about the Iranians, and I'm not really worried about war with Iran or anything like that either. I think that's a big old pipe dream. But my point is that the CIA does tell lies. It's part of their job. It's part of what they do. And they started talking about conspiracy and conspiracy theorists. And you should make mental note of all the people that are in the media that have connections to the CIA, you should make mental note of the 50 intelligence officers, or 50 some odd plus, that said the Hunter Biden story was fake, right? Make a mental note of these things every single time that these things happen. And when people sit there and they try to give you the indoctrination line, which they always do because they're indoctrinated and they're not aware of it, they're literally living in the matrix. Again, we're going to talk about, probably later in the week, if I get a chance to get the stuff together, we're going to talk a lot about Baudrillard, because I've been talking about how we live in this synthetic society. Now, he called it hyper reality. I think that hyper reality is part of it for sure, because everything's more than, right? But what's more important, I think, in an idea is that it's a synthetic product you are getting. It's not organic. It's not real. It's not from a place of authenticity, and it is meant specifically to give you a sense of reality that isn't true, because they don't believe in truth. They think that you can manufacture it however you would like. They believe it's democratic. In fact, when they talk about their democracy, that's what they're talking about. They're talking about the ability for them, the left, who have been oppressed for all of time, to have their little democracy, which is communism, by the way. But what that really comes down to, the reality of it, in first principles, is their oligarchy, which is why I say that to you guys all the time. When they say our democracy, they're talking about their oligarchy. And the reason why it's an oligarchy is because they are part of the special club. The media, academia, the government, some religious institutions as well, and these in the entertainment industry, of course, and these things combined are what is directing our society. It's not God, it's not the family, it's not the community. It is this thing from above that is placed upon you. But I'm just a conspiracy theorist, so
as to inhibit circulation of such claims in other countries. Whoever assassinated John F. Kennedy will probably only find out in the day of judgment. But it is clear that the CIA were either the first or one of the first major institutions or organizations that labeled anyone a conspiracy theorist who questioned the official narrative. And this trend has expanded into mainstream thought worldwide. Anyone who even questions the official accepted narrative is accused of being a conspiracy theorist, continuing the false accusations of the Central Intelligence Agency, the CIA. Scientific American asks, why do some people believe in conspiracy theories? And why do people cling to them during uncertain times, according to the Business Insider?
5G kills. I would encourage you, I'm not like big into the whole 5G thing, whatever, but I would encourage you looking into, excuse me, guys. Sorry about that. I haven't really been coughing lately, so I guess it's just me talking on here that wanted to bring that up out of me. Anyways, I would encourage you to look into the reactivity of graphene and 5G, because that's a lot of what these people are talking about. The notion or the idea of 5G being some sort of disruptor of electrochemical circuits in your body. Now, again, I don't know any of this, guys. I'm not saying that this is true. I'm just saying this is what's being put out there, right? And it's a scary thought. And kind of the idea is that in cities or whatever, what you do is you get people worked up by manufacturing crisis, like, BLM and all that stuff that we saw the other year, the Summer of Love, right? And then as that 5G is going through, it's messing with people's psychology. It's kind of like the scene in Kingsman, where they're in the church, and the guy plays the cell phone signal, right? Samuel L. Jackson's character, and it makes everyone go crazy and get violent because his whole belief was that they needed to make everyone get crazy and be violent in order to rid the earth of the population problem. And we'll talk about some of that later, actually, today. So just keep that in mind, though. Like, again, you can think whatever, but like for people to be concerned about that because they read some things that they found it interesting and compelling to them is not abnormal. That's a normal concern. Oh, man, do I really want this thing that we don't know what this technology is going to do on a large scale? I mean, I've had electricians who install 5G stuff tell me, oh, yeah, 5G can mess you up. So, again, this isn't something I harp on. This is never anything I bring up. I know what I've heard about it, and I know what I've talked to about a few people about it. So, to me, it's a true concern. Another example that's not so conspiratorial, but the left claimed it to be a conspiracy, was the border issue. Now, I've pretty much always been agnostic on the wall. And the reason why I'm kind of agnostic on it is I don't think that that's really the issue. The issue is the drug cartels and the corrupt government in Mexico, who's balled out largely. Not everyone in the government, obviously, but they're, this is just the way it is, right? They're very corrupted. You can go listen to experts about that, like someone like Ed Calderon or something like that. You can go listen to what they have to say about those things. But the banks are involved with it too, and they get a lot of money through the drug dealers, and of course there's money laundering. There's the human trafficking. So unless you can go against and fight the cartels, I don't know that the wall actually does anything. But that's not to say that there isn't a problem with migrants at the border or sex trafficking or drug trafficking at the border, because there is. The left, for years, I would argue with people on social media, would tell you, oh, no, it's a conspiracy theory. That's not true. No, folks. And it's something to legitimately be concerned about, especially if you live in those areas. You get coyotes getting people across, walking through your land. You don't know if they're going to kill you or what's going to happen. It's scary for some people, right? But you're just a conspiracy theorist. Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe because after a while, evidence comes out that confirms that some of it is actually true. And when the US government convinces most of the global media to sell a lie to the public to justify invading another nation's country for its natural resources, and that is based on a complete lie, you cannot really blame people for losing confidence in their governments for being dishonest. And some have seen the benefits of conspiracy theorists.
Some of it is ludicrous and some is quite reasonable. Governments do keep things from us.
And perhaps for that very reason, Professor Uszynski thinks a little dose of conspiracy thinking actually may be good for democracy.
Conspiracy theorists have for decades pushed for the release of more documents relating to the JFK assassination. Mm-hmm. That's a good thing. Conspiracy theorists pushed for the 9/11 Commission. That was a good thing. A world without conspiracy theories might be a very dangerous one, because at that point, no one's able to question power structures.
And yeah, that brings me to this, guys. So before we get into this, let me just run check. Let me check on the chat real quick. Matt over here. Matt says, yeah, the state circumvented free speech by fusing with big tech and fused with banks. Yeah, it's asking about Oswald's motivations. Right, because he was a communist sympathizer, apparently. That's always the line, right? Because he lived in the USSR and whatever else. I don't think so. I think Oswald may have been a part of that. Don't know if he actually pulled the trigger or not. Don't know if there was a single shooter. I don't know, man. But, like, who cares? We know that the government doesn't tell us the truth. Spook, you might be the only person on YouTube today Um, you know, is what it is, man. Today is Orthodox Passover. So or Easter. I don't know. I don't know if I have a lot of based Orthodox watching, but I'm just saying there might be some people who are doing church things. I disappeared for a week. It's not good for my channel for me not to stream for growth. It's just not. YouTube's a finicky thing, and it's not just YouTube, right? If I want to grow on Rumble or elsewhere, you have to be consistent. And unfortunately, since YouTube gave me 2 strikes back to back, one of the strikes which I appealed and beat, and then they struck me again 4 days later on it. Oh man, they're dirty. Anyways, and apparently when they struck me again, it did violate things, even though nothing changed. But regardless, I had to take a break, and since then, it's been slow going, man, and life's just been difficult. I mean, I got a 10-month-old who can walk. She's, she doesn't understand a lot. She gets into everything. It's hard to get things done. In any case, though, yeah, let's talk about some conspiracy theories that came up recently in the news. You may have heard this one. HHS secretary claims COVID vaccines kill people of color at twice the rate of whites. Vows to work harder to get more people vaccinated. He did say this. So the question is, did he misspeak? And I think maybe, but it's quite strange, quite funny how often these misspeaks happen, and how we hear many people like Jen Psaki say plandemic, or the CDC director, I can't recall her name off the top of my head, talk about these things in the same manner. The little potential Freudian slips, right? So it says, after months of mandates forcing people to get 2 and 3 doses of COVID vaccines to keep their job, attend school, travel, and enter indoor venues, the federal government admits the experimental gene modification shots are killing people. Well, I don't think he admitted that. I think he misspoke. You can find the video yourselves, folks. I'm not going to play it right now. This was, several days ago. This is the Gateway Pundit. I have other articles here, but they're the most legit news source, so I pulled them up. While vowing to ramp up biomedical tyranny in the effort to get more Americans vaccinated, U.S. Health and Human Service Director Xavier Becerra, I can't read, guys, claimed that safe and effective mRNA jabs are killing people with dark skin at a much higher rate than those with light skin. By the way, we know the vaccines, this is a quote from him, are killing people of color, blacks, Latinos, indigenous people, at about 2 times the rate of white Americans. He explained during the White House convening on equality, or equity, I mean. Interesting how they're talking about equity and health outcomes. After acknowledging the lethality of COVID shots, he explained that approximately 80% of the American public has been vaccinated, but the government needs to work harder to vaccinate Americans who have refrained from getting inoculated, he argued. So on vaccines last year, we saw that about 2/3 of white American adults have received at least 1 shot of vaccine. That was just barely over 50% for Black Americans and Latinos at that particular time. So again, we've got to work. Well, here's the problem. Those people don't trust you. The people that you say you speak for all the time, the government, the left says they speak for, spook. It's Xavier, not Xavier. If it's Xavier, whatever. I don't know. He might pronounce it Xavier, but it's spelled Xavier. So and in the States, that's how Xavier's spelled. I don't know if it's different in the UK or in Canada. They have the whole Z versus Z thing. They use Z, we use Z here. We like to be different, I guess. So anyways, the article goes on. We have the VAERS report from the time, right? And we can see that giant spike in VAERS, of course. But like I was saying, blacks and Hispanics were less likely to get this shot. But there's a thing. There's actually a thing with these populations in certain genetic diseases, and also culturally how they eat and having higher rates of heart disease. So this might be a part of that, right? Given what we know about the jab. My knowledge of how Xavier is pronounced comes entirely from the X-Men movies. I'm sure. Yes, Tank is an Eastern Orthodox. Yes. He goes to a Greek Orthodox church, from what I understand. Most of the people I know are part of Rokor, as the Russian Orthodox Church. And I don't think the East, or sorry, the East, the Greeks and the Russians are in communion with each other right now. So, but whatever. That's church drama. I don't care to get into. All right. Let's see here. But yeah, these different racial groups, if you would, are not getting the jab at the same rate. We'll bigly this a little bit. So here we have from Red Voice Media. I'm going to mute myself. I'm about to cough again. All right. Excuse me, guys. So White House says the quiet part out loud, confesses jab killing people of color at an alarming rate. So it goes through the story again, and then here's the video. Let's see if I can play this for you guys with appropriate volume. You let me know if you can hear it.
Secondly, by having better data, we can do a couple of things. Vaccines. A year ago today, by the way, we know that vaccines are killing people of color, blacks, Latinos, indigenous people at about 2 times the rate of white Americans. So on vaccines last year, we saw that about 2/3 of white American adults had received at least 1 shot of vaccine. That was just barely over 50% for Black Americans and Latinos at that particular time. So again, we've got to work. Today, a year later, over 80%.
Why do we have to get to work? What's the big deal? This thing's endemic. It's been endemic. You know. Anyways, this goes on. How talk about being prepared, all this stuff. Did he actually admit something, or again, was it that Freudian slip? Well, this is an interesting article. This is from the Miami Standard. It says Vax ethnic cleansing. HHS Secretary Xavier I'm not even going to try and pronounce his last name. I can't. Confirms vaccines are killing blacks and Latinos at 2 times the rate of white Americans. And what this article goes on, it talks about this, is the vitamin D deficiency. Vitamin D has been something we've known since the beginning of the pandemic that is needed. It's needed to get you healthy. It's a huge part. And people with darker skin tones tend to get less vitamin C, or vitamin D, that is. And this is a problem because a large portion of the people who are darker skin tones in the United States live in the northern part of the United States, and they live in cities. And they're not getting sun exposure. They need like 3 or 4 times the amount as most people. That their skin is literally dark to protect them from over sun exposure. So if they're going to have that hormone, vitamin D, created and released in their system from the sun exposure, they have to be outside a lot. This is actually a huge problem in all of our society, Western society, that is. Western industrialized society, we do not get enough sunlight. We don't get enough nutrients. We don't get enough vitamins. We don't get enough magnesium, vitamin C, which competes with carbohydrates. So Most people are actually just eating too many carbs and they get plenty of vitamin C. Of course, if you're a smoker, vitamin C is depleted through that, but uh, that means that you have to get more of it. There are a lot of things that we're deficient in. This specifically is because these people have dark skin, period. There's nothing racist about it. It's just their genetics. Remember, folks, when when COVID was racist back in the day, but meeting without masks and crowds, that was more important than the health crisis. And of course, it was more important because there wasn't any real crisis except for very, very ill people. So it talks about this long-standing mission, if you would, by globalists to eradicate people of color. This is a claim that the left makes all the time, of course. Back in the 1970s, for example, Richard Nixon's science advisor proposed tainting American food exports to Africa with infertility chemicals. In the decades since, depopulation efforts have focused on abortion, targeting Black neighborhoods, deadly cancer treatments, targeting Black infertility chemicals, and vaccines for African nations such as Kenya, and water supply poisoning of Blacks with heavy metals, and a deliberate malnutrition of Blacks in America through numerous government programs such as SNAP, food stamp system, that pays for processed junk food, and it does, or EBT cards. EBT is basically a food stamp on a debit card, and you can get anything but prepared food. Anything. It's not like specific foods. You can eat as many bags of potato chips as you want, or cookies, or whatever, as long as it's not prepared. So this statement here in this article, though, is saying that these things have been going on. Now, we can think to Flint, Michigan. No, I'm not saying that was purposeful, but Flint, Michigan had a water problem a few years back, right? We can think about the rampant growth of AIDS in Africa, right? And now, I'm not saying that was created. I'm just saying that these things are certainly things. We can think about, though, too, the claims that are out there about Bill Gates and his vaccination programs and certain nations, certain countries, and how he experimented on them. Again, they're claims, folks. I can't prove if they're right or wrong. I'm not going to be a conspiracy theorist. What I can say, though, is it's troubling. It's troubling to my mind, right? It says, in truth, the clot shot is just the latest round of genocidal efforts to exterminate Blacks in America and around the world. Now, again, this is a claim this article is making. It says, in 2017, more than 2 years before COVID, I released a shocking documentary, The Science Agenda to Exterminate Blacks. You guys can find that. He says the documentary was widely shared on YouTube till it was banished. I found it on YouTube elsewhere. But you can find that on Rumble if you want to look it up. The Science Agenda to Exterminate Blacks. And it's just a speech this guy gives with clips, and you think of it what you will. It is interesting that people will talk about how the CIA make crack cocaine a problem in the inner cities, right? But yet we trust these same intelligent analysts now today to give us proper information about whatever going on in the world. We trust these people to tell us about, it's not the CIA directly because they're not supposed to operate inside the United States, although they do. Big secret, guys. The CIA actually does operate in the United States. Anyways, generally what happens, what they really do, though, is they get like MI6 or Mossad or some other organization like that from another country to spy on American citizens for us, and then they just get the information directly from them so they don't break any laws, right? Anyways, yeah, the CIA more or less comes up with this idea of conspiracy theorists, right? Because the JFK and all that, to distance itself from them. Yet we know they have a rich history of just horrible things. And And we know that black people have been experimented on, like in the Tuskegee experiments and all that stuff. Yet the left will defend these folks today. Every time they defend the institutions, they literally are a death call. They literally embrace their own genocide. It is crazy. And if you look at the works of people who were the pro-abortionists, they called it birth control back in the day, like Margaret Sanger, they didn't like black folks. They thought they needed to be exterminated. So again, this is a long history on the left of genocide. Remember, folks, Nazis were leftists, and they wanted to genocide the Jews, as well as gypsies and a couple other racial groups they thought were inferior. That same thought is exactly what the modern left preaches today, except for the scapegoat is different. It's no longer Jewish. It's just white. But all those Jews out there who are in support of this CRT and all, who are embracing this idea, you have to realize that they consider you white too. They'll say they're not anti-Semitic, but I'll tell you what, yeah, I get it. There's a portion of the right who's very anti-Israel and whatever else right now. And so that gets fingered as being hugely anti-Semitic, and some of them are. But the left has a much more storied history about that. And the communists kicked them out in Russia as well. And all the other Slavic Soviet nations. So keep these things in mind, folks. The human race has been targeted for termination. Depopulation globalists are prioritizing certain races and ethnic groups for rapid extermination. In other words, we are at a crosshairs, but they desperately want black and brown people to be eliminated as quickly as possible. Of course, this goes on, talks about various ways that they do this. I'm not going to go through the whole article. I got a bunch of stuff I want to get to, but it's interesting that they would talk about this, that he would say it, whether it was, purposeful or a Freudian slip. He did say the quiet part out loud. And now you can think whatever you want from natural news. I'm surprised YouTube is even letting me stream continue, because I even brought up natural news. But you can go to this article from 2017. It was the one that was referenced in that. And it says, New York Times, spike food supply with sterilization chemicals to cause global infertility and depopulation. This is from an old 1969 New York Times feature article. And that is right here. A sterility drug in food is hinted. Biologist stresses need to curb population growth. This is November 25th, 1969. Actually, I think the article is the next one I have. But they were publishing these things. Of course, we could look at the full article. Maybe that was it. Okay. This one is from August 12th, 1970. Now, the interesting thing about these dates and these articles, right? Touchy question of overpopulation, is that this is about the time when the Club of Rome and MIT got together and wrote a book. And all this stuff you're hearing, and I've talked about the Strauss-House theory of the fourth turning. But all these things that you're hearing about that get related back to this time period. Now, at this time, these folks believed that the Earth was going to globally cool. By the mid-'80s, they had switched to global warming. That's what I was taught in elementary school in the 80s. And this depopulation, or overpopulation, therefore we must depopulate, was a very big thing. In fact, at the time, China had its one-child policy in place, which it's now suffering from because it has a lack of women. So it says the latest dance has emerged not from rock-oriented youth, but from their elders. It is walking on eggs toe dance around the touchy question that some have dubbed the population bomb. And you can Google that. That's a book. Right? This is what was expected. Too many people on Earth. We're not overpopulated, folks. We're actually underpopulated. Their agenda is working. right? But they've manufactured this. They've manufactured this idea in our society. They've been doing it since at least the 70s. Of course, Thomas Malthus is from the 1800s, so that's where all this comes from. The bomb concept is simple and is the simple belief that steps must be taken to curb mankind's unbridled proliferation before there are just more bodies than Earth, only 8,000 miles in diameter, can accommodate. Well, I doubt it. I think you're not thinking of the technological issue here, right? How we can do things better as we increase in technological capabilities. Of course, we might be at the zenith of our civilization. We very well may be. There are studies suggesting that IQ is going down. Now, I think that's engineered as well. But we know that there isn't really any new art. That's a big problem with all the, retconning and rebranding and whatever they do with all this old stuff. Right? And of course, it's getting made woke, which makes it garbage. And only garbage people are into wokeness generally. Some of the people are garbage people. I should take that back. Some of them are just naive and confused and deceived. But that probably means that you were a weak person in the first place. And I don't mean that to be insulting. I mean, you are mentally weak. You never had strength. Not mentally, not emotionally. And so you latch onto this thing because it gives you power. Because that's all it's about. It's all about power, folks. Anyways, it says the commonplace statistic is that at the present rate of population increase, the Earth's population will double in about 30 years from the present 3.5 billion to 7 billion. Okay, this was written in 1970. That would have been in 2000. That happened. And by all estimates, it is going to cap and stagnate at 12 billion. In fact, it might even go down. A lot of people are believing that it will go down. Elon Musk had talked about this recently. But again, this is not, the manufactured belief, which is why you'll have people thinking that you're a crazy person believing this. Because the manufactured belief is that, yes, we will all die. It says right here, more staggeringly, is a slight further projection. 7 billion people in the year 2000, some demographers say, would mean 15 billion by 2025 and 2050, 30 billion. Well, neither one of those is correct. There aren't 15 billion people. We are 3 years away from 2025. It is believed around 10 to 12 billion is where we will cap. People are not repopulating the earth right now. And if everyone had children, we still, and we doubled our population, we still could do it if we just used our resources better. The problem is we give rich folk, and I'm not against all rich folk, but I'm just saying, we give rich folk this control and power over our lives because, well, they have wealth. And we tend to judge that as some sort of means to their excellence. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. And so they then get into offices and they have their little plans and they get together and then they get in the media and they do all the things and then they manufacture how you're supposed to think about these things, right? Versus if we had what James Lindsay called a second enlightenment, where we had a freedom of information, a true freedom of information where people could decide on their own instead of having these gatekeepers and these people deciding for us. And the same with technology and all these other things. If people actually had access to these things more readily, and I get it, like I'm not trying to talk utopian like a leftist here. But there are barriers, right, to access of things. And if people had more access and they had more control over their lives, they would 100% be able to get along much easier and much better. And I don't think we'd be worried about these kind of issues. But what do? We all clamor into these little cities that are smelly and gross and hot. You look at global warming charts around the world and you don't see it. It doesn't exist unless you look at cities. Once you look at cities, oh yeah, the temperature is rising. I wonder why. I wonder why all that steel and concrete and people and vehicles and carbon emissions are making the cities hotter. I wonder why that is. It must be science or something. Anyways, one last consideration. This is from the National Library of Medicine. What? The placing of anti-fertility drugs in food supplies, one answer to our global population crisis. I mean, this is right here, written in 1991. Family planning aids. Oh, no, those are similar articles. I'm sorry. What is the date of this article? It doesn't really say, does it? '95. Oh, I see it there. The American Journal of Psychotherapy. Does that seem like an appropriate article to be in the American Journal of Psychotherapy? It's really strange to me how the APA and the DSM-5 are so important to our society. Quite strange. The February 10th, 1985 issue of the New York Times included an item with the heading, "Dog food is proposed or purposed with secret ingredients, birth control." At first glance, this item would appear to be of little moment of passing interest. Another isolated fragment. Let me get this bigger so I can read this easier. Let's see. Another isolated fragment of information that fills newspapers and mass media news programs to give them bulk and entertainment value. The column simply stated that a major producer of canned dog food was planning to market a product containing a hormone similar to progesterone that would prevent estrus in female dogs, thereby preventing them from becoming pregnant. This does not represent any basic scientific breakthrough in anti-fertility research. It does, however, represent the first organized large-scale proposal for controlling a population by placing anti-fertility chemicals and biologicals in staple food substances. This initiative is likely to initiate a practice that will become one of the primary means of human population control on a global basis. Now, I don't know what you guys eat. You know, I get Jimmy John's a lot for lunch when I work. But this is why you need to be in control of your food supply. This is why you need to take responsibility for yourself and get self-sustaining instead of being part of this synthetic world. There have been optimistic theoretical projections that the world birth rate could be cut in half during the next 2 decades. I don't see that as a good thing. You know, if we reduce our population, yeah, there'll be more resources, but there'll also be less minds to create things and get those resources to places. In any case, it's quite concerning. What's up, Big Nick? That was random. You talking to Big Nick or me? Do you think the Lutheran position that the Pope is an antichrist holds any sort of water? Yeah. Yeah, it's not the Lutheran position, though. It's the Protestant position. It was. Most modern Protestants don't know that. The Reformation happened, and the Reformation gets credited to Martin Luther. Martin Luther was a horrible person, by the way. He's not someone to be praised. He was a horrible Christian. He was mad when he went to Rome and found out that everyone had prostitutes and girlfriends and whatever else, and there were all these bastard children. He thought that literally, based on Augustinian writing, that Rome was the city of God, which is screwed up because Rome is equated with Babylon in the Bible. Anyways, so Martin Luther did say, eventually, he did come to the position that the Pope was the Antichrist, but there were 2 centuries of people before Martin Luther who were trying to reform the church, and there were always different Christian groups that had broke off, most of them persecuted by the Catholic Church. It's very clear by the writers of the New Testament that there will be a figure who is a political figure and a religious figure at the same time who will run the church. And he says he will sit in the hearts of men and he will speak blasphemies. Well, blasphemy is a very specific thing. Blasphemy is claiming to be God. You know this, Spook, you're Muslim. It's claiming to be God, or it's claiming to be able to have the power to act as God. This is why when Christ forgave people's sins, the Pharisees and the Sadducees said this is blasphemy, because only God can forgive sins. You know, people will make the claim that Christ never proclaimed to be God. Well, you didn't read your scriptures very well. He very much did. He just didn't say it directly. Yeah. I know that one of the best books that I own from that period of people who believe this is from Sir Isaac Newton. And he was a very religious man. And once he got done creating calculus and physics with the genius that he was, he then went on to study scriptures the rest of his life. And he wrote a book on the prophecies of Daniel and Revelation. And he points to the Pope as being the Antichrist and the United States as being the 8th beast that came out of the earth, which I agree with as well. What happened in the Protestant movement is that the Jesuits came along. They had a counter-reformation, and they came up with 2 new versions of Revelations, 2 new interpretations. And those new interpretations are what the modern church believes in. It's all that left behind nonsense. Now, mind you, people were coming to a pre-rapture, a rapture before there is it's not the final judgment, but before there's a persecution of the saints. That's absurd, because all Christians throughout history have always understood, historically speaking, not different sects or whatever. I'm just saying as a whole of what Christianity is that you are to be persecuted. And so they did this whole thing. And so that, like, Kirk Cameron Left Behind series thing that was real popular in the early 2000s and all that kind of stuff, that's all Catholic propaganda that Protestants have adopted. And you'll see a lot of Protestants today talking about returning to the Catholic Church. The problem with Protestantism is it's based in Catholicism. It's a rejection of Catholicism that has no roots of its own. It doesn't mean you can't have a godly relationship, with Christ or God the Father and be a Protestant. I absolutely believe you can. In fact, the scriptures talk about this, that there were people outside of the church all the time, right? But the beliefs of Protestantism go back to Augustinianism, and Augustine is I know he's considered a saint, but he's a heretic. He's absolutely a heretic. He wrote many good things when he was younger in the church, and then as he got older, he created the whole doctrine of predestination, which doesn't exist. It's a fabrication of his mind. He makes God to be a evil tyrant and dictator, the author of evil, who arbitrarily sends you to heaven or hell. And that's what Calvin picked up on. It's much what Luther picked up on as well. And so Luther created the phrase faith and faith alone. No, the ancient Christian church, they never would have believed that. If you had faith in something, you proved it by your actions. This is, again, clearly what the scriptures teach. Christ says repeatedly, you will know them by their fruit, meaning that they are going to bear fruit. You're going to do some sort of work that shows that you are a Christian. He He says, remain on the vine of Christ. He doesn't say there are people out there like Pastor Anderson and the crazy stuff that he says who believe that, you could be a murderer. You gave your life to Christ one time. You went to church one time, and because you knelt at the altar and you said, Christ, I invite you into my heart, you're saved for all eternity. And then you could go murder and rape people and do anything you want after that. You'll still be in heaven. He teaches that. That's an outright lie. That's not what's in the scriptures. And it's not what anyone in the early church believed. So anyways, I didn't mean to go on like a 5-minute tangent there, Spook, but you asked a question. So let's get into the other topic I wanted to get into for the day, actually. And make sure I get my screen shares up here. Oh, you know what? I think I had the right thing up. I accidentally closed that down. How to get that back up. All right, guys. So real quick, I want to watch a video from Trigonometry because, I was just talking about this manufactured control, right? This manufactured society. And it is really important that you guys start understanding this because it's one of those things, like it's the difference between taking the red pill and the blue pill, right? Once you see, you can't unsee. But it needs to be stressed to the normies because they don't know. They don't understand how they're programmed. And I'm going to show you some of this programming as we go. But from Trigonometry, go check out their YouTube channel, guys. Give them a sub. They're a good channel. You have this little clip about Elon Musk and Twitter.
Hey Francis, are you progressive?
Of course, can't you see I'm transitioning?
Good point. So, as a progressive, how would you feel if a single person controlled all the information in the world and decided what we're allowed to say and think?
Yes, Twitter is a private platform that should censor people who don't agree with me.
That does sound very progressive. What if I told you this person has built 2 million electric cars to fight climate change?
Yes!
What if I told you he's African American?
Yes! Diversity is our strength.
Well, I have good news for you. Elon Musk wants to buy Twitter.
No!
5 minutes later. Thousands of tears later.
What if he stopped censoring people I don't agree with?
Well, Twitter is a private platform.
What?
You said it yourself. Twitter is a private platform that can decide who to censor.
Yeah, but I didn't fucking mean it. That's just something we say to win.
But he's a good guy. He was even a vegetarian for a while.
So was Hitler.
Well, isn't it great to have an African American in charge, for diversity?
You call this diversity? A straight white man who believes in free speech? I know he gave his kid a gender non-binary name, but unless he identifies as a transracial lesbian who agrees with everything I say, this isn't good enough.
But he openly criticized Donald Trump over climate change and he's donated to the Democrats.
I don't care. He's worse than Hitler. He said pronouns suck and criticized woke people.
Well, you are right. Even Adolf never went as far as making fun of pronouns. So, do you have a progressive solution to the Twitter problem?
Yes, it should be owned by someone who agrees with everything I say and who is kind and respectful.
Like who?
BlackRock, Morgan Stanley, and the Saudi royal family.
That's who owns it now.
Exactly. Progress is about keeping things just the way I like it.
This is Elon Musk.
Hey guys, what's up?
All right. So, there's been a lot of news about Elon and the whole Twitter thing. I actually bought stock in Twitter because I'm hoping that Elon's going to make that stock go up. And I'm not suggesting that you guys do anything, but maybe, if you can, you should consider doing that yourself. And maybe eventually there can be pressure put on the chair, who none of them have any sort of significant stock. Hey, Holly, how you doing? People jumping in here randomly. But I know people got stuff going on. So, of course, from CNN, of course they would say this, right? Oh, come on, mouse. Sorry, guys. Opinion: we shouldn't trust Musk's plans to transform Twitter. Why, CNN? You don't want to transform Twitter. You like having power and control there. When Elon Musk offered to buy Twitter and take it private last week, he wrote that he believed the company needed to be transformed. We'll bigly this some more, folks. There we go. You just got the alert? That's wonderful. Well, it's all 4:20 p.m. here. Since we're talking about Elon Musk, we're going to talk about that here in a bit. But yeah, I've been streaming for an hour and 20 minutes or so that's interesting. The next day, Musk took on the stage at a TED conference where he criticized the company for what he sees as its lack of free speech, a longtime complaint of his, but suggested that the company should not promote a tweet that was particularly controversial. But what the richest person in the world wants isn't always good for the rest of us. Well, yeah, I said that earlier, but for some reason, you don't mind promoting the rich people you like because you seem to not care that Jeff Bezos owns the Washington Post, right? Or Mark Zuckerberg runs Facebook. Seems like perhaps this is some manufactured nonsense. Musk isn't just offering to buy another expensive Babel, but another global online community that, as of 2019, included approximately 33 million monthly active users. Okay, but only 2% of them are actually active. Only 2%. We know this. Like 33 million. I'm one of those 33 million, probably, of active users because I retweet things every 2 or 3 days. I rarely tweet anything of my own. I rarely get on Twitter. I don't really use it. I use it to communicate and keep in touch with people and sometimes to get news stuff and to do my show here. With control of such a vast online platform comes great responsibility. What are you talking about, CNN, who lies about everything all the time? You guys try to do an online platform and spent, $300 million on it. I could use $300 million. I could buy a lot of land and get a lot of people, out in the boonies and creating communities with $300 million. And what you did was a 20 some odd day streaming service that nobody cared about because your outlet is garbage. Anyways, and Musk's ability to be an accountable steward of this massive online community is questionable at best. Why? Everything he seems to touch turns to gold, doesn't it? That's why Twitter shareholders should reject Musk's offer. No. No, you want them to reject the offer because you don't want him to have this kind of power. For one thing, he has a poor track record of protecting other Twitter users and respecting their free speech. How? Twitter doesn't have free speech. What are you talking about? He has used the platform to discredit and disparage those who disagree with him. Well, yeah, that's kind of what you do. It's a blood sport, right? Twitter's a blood sport. That's why when I get on there and I do interact with people, I don't take it seriously. I laugh at them, especially at their ignorance, because they are wholly ignorant. And he has lashed out at journalists who have written or produced things he didn't like. Oh my goodness. How dare you criticize a journalist? Well, Jessica Gonzalez is obviously a sophist. And she can be the co-CEO of the Free Press, but she's obviously a sophist because whatever that name of Free Press is that she CEOs, doesn't believe in it. Further, he has used the platform to sow doubt about COVID-19 vaccines. So what? So what? Natural immunity is better. That's been established. It was established a long time ago, but, everyone forgot because, we manufacture our society today. We manufacture the consensus. We manufacture reality. It's all synthetic, folks. And he has been accused of making false statements about Tesla on Twitter and allegations that resulted in a $40 million settlement with the SEC that required Musk and Tesla to pay $20 million each. And Musk, to step down as the company's chairman, Musk accepted a deal with the SEC without admitting or denying the allegation of complaint, according to a court's documents. So what? So you're telling me that all the other billionaire owners of these vast companies, they never have any SEC complaints? Sure. Let's get back to that vax thing there real quick. Like, wasn't there a big dump from the documents that it basically negated everything that was said for a year about the vax and the jab, and everything that the conspiracy theorists said ended up being right for the most part? Yeah. I got off of it because that basically every time I mentioned COVID for a while, freaking YouTube was going after me. And it wasn't that I didn't want to talk about it. I found ways to talk about it. But it's that it was clear and evident what was going on. And I felt really bad last spring. It's hard to believe it was this long ago. I think it was last spring, or maybe the information was coming out in spring, but whenever it was, last summer, I started realizing how bad the jab actually potentially could be. I felt bad for not making a bigger deal about it. If Musk incendiary passed, okay, sophist. Is Twitter's future users are right to be worried about the way a multi-billionaire would attempt to transform the platform should he become its owner. Oh, man. For the past 5 years, I've been working with Free Press and the Change the Terms Coalition to protect online communities from content that's intended to mislead or incite violence. So you're not about free press. That's what I said. You're just a sophist. Do you see how they do this Orwellian nonsense? From 1984, guys. It's quite a profound monologue that goes on here to the main protagonist, Winston. Power is inflicting pain and humiliation. Power is tearing human minds to pieces and putting them back together again in new shapes of your own choosing. Do you begin to see, then, what kind of world we are creating? It is the exact opposite of the stupid, hedonistic utopias that the old reformers imagined. A world of fear and treachery is torment, a world of trampling and being trampled upon, a world which will grow not less but more merciless as it refines itself. Progress in a world will be progress toward more pain. The old civilizations claimed that they were founded on love or justice. Ours is founded upon hatred. In our world, there will be no emotions except fear, rage, triumph, and self-abasement. Everything else shall be destroyed. Everything. Already we are breaking down the habits of thought which have survived from before the revolution. We have cut the links between child and parent, between man, and between man and woman. No one dares trust a wife or a child or a friend any longer. But in the future, there will be no wives and no friends. Children will be taken from their mothers at birth as one takes eggs from a hen. The sex instinct will be eradicated. Procreation will be an annual formality, like the renewal of a ration card. There will be no loyalty except loyalty toward the party. There will be no love except the love of Chairman Obama. Well, I don't know how that got in here. Of Big Brother is what it should say. I cut this, so I guess the guy reworded it some. Chairman Obama. Man, I should have read it ahead. I didn't realize I was cutting a edited version. There will be no laughter except the laughter of triumph over a defeated army, or sorry, defeated enemy. There will be no art, no literature, no science. What do you think they're doing now, folks? When we are omnipotent, we shall have no more need of science. There will be no distinction between beauty and ugliness, postmodernism. There will be no curiosity, no enjoyment of the processes of life. All competing pleasures will be destroyed. Always there will be the intoxication of power, constantly increasing and constantly growing subtler. Always, at every moment, there will be the thrill of victory, the sensation of trampling on an enemy who is helpless. If you want to picture the future, imagine a boot stamping on the human face forever. That, my friends, is what that article is about. That is what this lady is in for. Now, maybe she doesn't believe that wholeheartedly for herself, but that's what we're looking at. I have a coalition of online free speech platform that curtails misleading information. Sorry, lady. Misinformation is a necessity in a world of freedom. You are anti-freedom. You are pro-totalitarianism. I don't know if Musk will fix Twitter. What I do know is that anyone writing something like this is a shill, a sophist, and only cares about themselves and their power. From the New York Times, why everyone wants to buy Twitter. Elon Musk is the latest person who thinks he can fulfill Twitter's untapped potential. Well, Twitter is a dumpster fire that is undervalued. It's not undervalued. It's valued exactly where it's at because it keeps losing people, because it keeps banning people. And it keeps shifting the Overton window by getting rid of people who are fairly moderate, despite what, I might say or believe. I'm actually a fairly moderate person. I believe in the Constitution and stuff, though, which makes me a radical. Believing that our government should follow its own rules makes you a radical. Believing in revolution, though, no, that's mainstream. When up and down is up, and war is peace, and peace is, war is peace. Ignorance is strength, right? All that good stuff. And freedom is slavery. Yeah. For nearly its entire 16-year life, Twitter has had the reputation that it hasn't fulfilled its potential and could be so much more. Well, it was so much more until you started banning people. It exploded. It went from people talking about what they ate for breakfast at lunch, or that they were taking a poop, or they went to the grocery store. I used to make fun of it. I used to call it twatter, to being an actual force in politics, where politicians could actually speak to their constituents, and where journalists could actually get feedback from their readers, and where social media people, I don't want to say content creators or influencers or anything like that, but social media folks who have followings could, interact with their audiences. Twitter has a lot of potential. But see, the only reason why it has any power is because the left controls it. The only reason why it has any real potential. Its stock is abysmal, guys. Its stock is completely abysmal, which is, again, why maybe you should invest in it. We're talking, it's like $48 a share right now. When I bought into it Monday, it was $45 a share. So I've gained $3 on the 10 shares I bought. That's pretty nice. For nearly its entire 16-year life, Twitter has had the reputation that it hasn't fulfilled its potential and could be so much more. Twitter's conundrum is that it's widely known, but not that widely used. Yeah, because it's a dumpster fire. Musk is talking about getting rid of the bots and the leftists and the anonymous accounts. If you guys didn't know, like if you follow me on Twitter, my picture has been there. My real name is there. My full name. I do not do all the bot stuff. Now, right now, I have a funny picture up there as my avatar because I'm just sick of the brainwashing in our society. But I don't play that shit. I don't do the anonymity thing. I understand why people do it, but I think you gotta have skin in the game. I really do. And part of that is standing by your beliefs and what you say. And if that means you lose a job, that means you lose a job, folks. That's part of doing what's right. The Twitter conundrum is that it is widely known, but is not widely used, financially successful, but not wildly so. Sometimes competently managed, but also chaotic and influential in a way that is exciting, but also terrifying. The perpetual belief that Twitter is one big idea away from being amazing has made many people think about buying the company to make it shine, but hardly anyone wants to actually own it. Is that true? Is that true at all? Saudi princes want to own it. They want to control what you believe. Whether you're hooked on Twitter or among the world's majority that stays off the app, what happened to this company matters. And remember, when there was a viable alternative, there are other viable alternatives. Minds is one. Gab is really good, actually, but it's just a right-wing echo chamber, right? But you had Parler, which was gaining a lot of steam. What did they do? They nuked it. Twitter and Facebook had far more to do, especially Facebook, with any sort of organization of protesters of January 6th than Parler. But this is what they do, right? This is how our society is manufactured. And people will forget about Parler. They will. 2-3 years from now, you will say the word Parler to somebody, or you will hear about it, and you'll be like, oh, yeah, I forgot about that thing. I forgot about that thing that was blowing up for about 6 months and got vaporized. Twitter is a digital gathering place the world's leaders increasingly fear and want to control, and where elected officials, activists, journalists, and executives like Musk spread their message and settle scores. You mean it's a place where people interact online. That's all it is. It's nothing special. It just happens to be the place that people go to because of its ease of use, I suppose. Musk made a half-baked proposal last week to buy Twitter that effectively put a for sale sign on the company. It was not half-baked. It was rather well planned and way more than the company's worth. Maybe Musk will wind up owning Twitter if he stays interested long enough to find money bags to help him afford the offer, about $43 billion. Well, Tesla just released its quarterly earnings, and they're up, guys. They're up. Elon's got more money. He is, I believe, the richest man on earth right now. He competes with Bezos and whatever. They go back and forth, but living with an uncertain future is nothing new for Twitter. You could spend days tallying the number of times the companies have considered buying on social media sites or that were rumors about a possible sale. Twitter has been perpetually for sale, partially for technical reasons. Unlike some tech and media companies, including Google, Facebook, and New York Times, interesting. New York Times is in there, right? Twitter doesn't have a special type of stock that empowers its founders to all but veto a sale. But there is also a perennial belief that Twitter should be something other than what it is. There's no shortage of people who believe that all Twitter needs is some fix, an edit function. Now, there's a downside to the edit function, although I think that they should have an edit function, and that is that obviously you can go back and change your tweets. But that's also the upside of it, right? People will still take screenshots of pre-edited stuff. One of the things I hate the most, because I'm really bad at spelling and stuff, but I'm pretty good actually at writing, at composition, and so I tend to write a lot, and I tend to miss things while I write it, and then if I post it, not necessarily on Twitter, but anywhere, like Facebook, for instance, then I have to go back and edit it immediately. And that was a thing for a while when I was like really on social media all the time. people will go, oh, you edited it. You misspelled this. You're a moron. Da, da, da. It's like the most juvenile, idiotic argument. Sometimes you just misspell a word or misspeak or spell, autocorrect happens. All of those things, right? It's one of those things I had to embrace in a little bit of perfectionism as I was dating when I was younger, because the reality is when you're texting and dating, it's like women, they like to get a certain feeling in that, and if you're misspelling words all the time, sometimes people think you're dumb. But you have to just let it go. And for me, I just tell them, hey, I can't spell. Sorry. Phonetics, not the thing I'm best at. That's a dyslexia thing. Hearing sounds, saying sounds, enunciations, all that's part of the dyslexia thing. Anyways, different management, a new type of technological backbone, a shift of advertising strategies, lower expenses and app tweaks, and more lax rules of expression. Politicians and other influential people, including Musk, regularly complain that Twitter is censoring too much or too little. The only people that think Twitter censors too little are totalitarian tyrants. No regular person believes that. And if you're a regular person and you think that, you're stupid. I'm just telling you right now, you're dumb. The lack of information, whether the information is true or false, does not matter. It's the lack of information that enslaves you. If you don't know anything but slavery, right? How do you know what freedom is? I will defer you to someone like Yao Ming Park, because you hear her talk, you listen to her story, you read her book, In Order to Live. I have back here somewhere. She didn't know how to make choices. She didn't know how to think about things, because all she ever knew was the slave caste system she grew up in. This is part of manufacturing the society, folks. Right? Curating speech. It's literally like the most important thing. And the left knows that. And they only care about their power. If I could boil that down to a sentence, it's that Twitter is not Facebook, which has 23 times the annual revenue of Twitter and nearly 2 billion daily users, to Twitter's 217 million. The company's, see right there, it shows you that daily users is even less than their active users, right? By 100 million, 115 million nearly. The company counts users slightly differently, but you get the point. The cultural influence of Twitter is just as great as Facebook, and yet it's 1/10 of the size. Facebook is for boomers. Twitter is where all of the young people are at, but not so much anymore, because people are leaving it in droves, and that's why they want to see Elon come in and change things, because it's one-sided. As Tim Pool points out all the time, the fact that to call someone who's transgender, right? Transgender, someone who pretends to be a male or a female when they're actually biologically the opposite sex, to call them by their biological sex is hate speech, according to Twitter. That is a left-wing position. Therefore, Twitter is left-wing biased automatically. Period. And it's not just establishment bias, because they do allow some things the establishment doesn't like. But left-wing bias tends to be establishment bias. Hunter Biden comes to mind, right? And the burying of that story. We know that would have changed things in the election, aside from the strategic use of fortification. The cultural influencers in Twitter is just as great as Facebook, and yet it's 1/20th of the size. Mark Mahaney, who has followed Twitter for years as an investment analyst, now with Evercore. Okay, I don't care who he's with, whatever. That makes people ask, what is wrong with Twitter, he said. And yet the people and companies who have looked closely at buying Twitter have mostly been scared off. In 2016, Disney backed off its flirtation with buying it, partially because executives worried about trashing the company's family-friendly image. Well, you don't care about that now, do you, Disney? Don't care about that one bit, I don't think. Gonna trash our family-friendly image. While we groom everybody. Speaking of which, if you hadn't heard, Disney going public self-immolation is just what we needed. Yeah, they're getting crushed right now. Absolutely crushed as far as stocks and stuff goes. And they ought to. It what they've done is quite disgraceful. But let's get back to what we were looking at. But it says Disney worried about the family-friendly image if it owned an unruly social media app. I don't think anyone would care. Disney owns far more, though, in the world than just Disney, right? Like ABC and ESPN and all that stuff. All woke, too. Think about all the grooming stuff that has come out and all that stuff that's on Twitter right now. If Disney owned that, do you think that would be on there? The Salesforce boss, Mark Benoff, changed his mind when Salesforce investors hated the idea of a business software company owning Twitter. Well, Salesforce has got issues too, and I know about Salesforce because my wife's work. And in fact, they really screwed over James O'Keefe. I've mentioned it before. You can talk about it. They're a common thing that a lot of companies, especially nonprofits, use. Keeps tracks of donors and stuff like that, but they're in the political mire too. Like, I don't know why we can't just have companies make stuff. Like, that's great, but now everything has to be political. It might be because the left won a long time ago, folks, and they are the ones who to curate the narrative, and they are the ones who manufacture everything in society. And I mean that. Like, half of what we believe is fake. More than half. And we know that even in the sciences, the social sciences particularly, there is an 80% replication problem of studies. The same studies that leftists want to point to all the time to prove their points that aren't real. The government authorities most likely wouldn't permit companies that would seem to be a good fit with Twitter, including Google and Facebook, to buy it because of antitrust concerns. Right. And they need broken up as is. Twitter is too big, but it's also not big enough. It is good, but also not good enough. It's not Facebook, yada, yada, yada. So it's going to go on with excuses. But the reality is what Musk wanted to do would revive Twitter and make it useful. Where's that at? Oh. Elon Musk is a digital Citizen Kane. It's from the New York Times as well. So let's see if we can get a little list here of what he wants to do. Talking about it's unpredictable. The Mercurial billionaire wants to recast Twitter in his image and echoes of the 19th century newspaper barons. Okay. I know you guys like to complain about the Murdochs owning Fox News, who are basically globalist left-wingers that are slightly conservative pro-business. But you never mention Jeff Bezos, now do you? Or how about Bloomberg? You did vote for him as a mayor. Do you mention those people as newspaper barons? It's unbelievable. Not to mention, the New York Times is privately owned. Pretty sure. You can look that up. Make sure I'm not crazy here. I'm more than certain the New York Times is privately owned and by billionaires. Let's see. Right here on Wiki. An American mass media company with published in New York Times, headquarters in Manhattan, industry founded in 1851. The company moved to a cable channel industry in the 40s, 40% interest, November 1994. In 1996, expanded upon its broadcasting, purchasing Palmer Communication, who owns WHODT in Des Moines. The company completed its purchase. The Washington Post, 50% interest in the International Herald. In 2005, the company acquired About.com. The Times on August 25th, 2020 or 2006 acquired Baseline Studio Systems, an online database and research service on the film and television industries. So I'm not seeing like ownership and leadership. Here we go. On January 20th, 2009, New York Times reported that its parent company, the New York Times Company, had reached an agreement to borrow $250 million from Carlos Slim, a Mexican billionaire, to help the newspaper company finance its businesses. They later repaid the loan ahead of the schedule. Find that interesting. A little sus, don't you think? She's talking about billionaire barons owning things. Since then, Slim has bought large quantities of the company's Class A shares, which are available for purchase by the public and offer less control over the company than Class B shares. So they have special shares for private holders to have a say over it. Who do you think owns that, folks? Slim's investment in the company include large purchases of Class A shares. Yeah, we keep going through here. And you have the board of directors. But yeah, so it is publicly traded, but it's not really fully publicly owned, right? There are people that have larger shares than others. Elusive politics. Musk is often described as a libertarian, but he has not shrunken from government help when it has been good for his business. Neither has any of the people you like. That's just called doing business today. I don't like it. But all the stuff that the left complained about with Trump and doing business is everything all the people they like do. They don't complain about Patrisse Cullors scamming poor people out of money because they're black to then give it to Act Blue and buy $1 million mansions. Not one bit. In fact, you get people like Hassan Piker who say, or who think that that's great and they should do that and they have to live in the system, or Vosh, who only cares about power and thinks that it's fine, who's also quite wealthy. None of those people are never giving you any of their money, folks. It's not happening. So he talks about his TED Talk and whatever else. Basically, what I understood, without going through all this, because I'm getting up to the 2-hour mark here, folks, and I want to talk about other things as well. Is that Musk wants to make the platform useful and potentially allow for free speech as long as it doesn't cause, violence and stuff. Because again, Twitter talks about this crap like it's innocent. People on Twitter, leftists, talk about it like they're innocent. But yet they don't care if there's violence for Antifa being organized there because of repressive tolerance. In fact, if January 6th was done by Antifa, folks, we wouldn't be having commissions, would we? No, we wouldn't. No, we would not. Let me check on chat here. I haven't looked at this in a while. Bill, you are a degenerate? Is that what you mean? Drive gent? Point on the intersectional hierarchy? Okay. Elon, the other white meat. He's a white male, so it's a wash. Yeah, right. They don't care if it's a white male, dude. That's all nonsense. That's all about making people feel guilty. A more balanced platform is going to have a longer shelf life. Yes, yes. Agreed. And I had a few other articles actually. But for the sake of time, I actually don't want to go over all these. Twitter's board detailed its poison pill defense. Of course, if you don't know what a poison pill is, we can go to Fox News. They explain it. Basically, though, it's the framing here that why I brought this up. Poison pill defense against Elon Musk and unfair takeover tactics. Well, there's nothing unfair about what Musk is doing. He offered you money more than your company is worth, and you didn't like that because you like the power of it. Saudi Prince didn't like that either. Who was it? BlackRock then bought, 10.4% of shares to beat Musk's. They tried to put him on the board and say, we have to limit your shares, which Musk rejected. I'm very happy about that. Yeah. Hostile takeover just means that it's not slow. He's trying to actually do it. He's trying to push the ball. And there are SEC complaints right now, and they are filing because the board is not doing things in the interest of the shareholders. And I'm a shareholder now. So, yeah. Get the hell out of the way, board, and let Elon do the thing. And then from Business Insider, I told you I'd bring this up. Twitter's poison pill continues the pot joke reference by including a provision to allow investors to receive stock at $420 per share. That would be great because that would take my little, $450 some odd dollar investment and make it $4,000 some odd dollars. I would really go for it, guys. Right now, I don't feel like I can lose on this unless Twitter just remains as is, and I don't think it's going to. But the fight, of course, is over who gets to curate the narrative, who gets to manufacture the consensus of the day, right? So I guess I have an hour or so left, guys, not because I have to stream for the next hour, but because I have other things I wanted to talk to. It's going to be a long one today. And, what we see with this manufacturing of our society, with the synthetic world, is that anyone who doesn't go along is basically ostracized, right? This is nothing new. You all know this. You all know very well that if you don't believe in what the narrative, the propaganda of the day is, the beliefs like, I support Ukraine and I got jabbed today and I voted and all that nonsense. Like when people tell me this, it is the most infuriating, fake, annoying thing I ever hear in my life when people say these things and they repeat them. It's like, are you a person or are you just some machine that's programmed? Well, you all probably know the answer to that. So here we got the current state of things in politics. We have Marjorie Taylor Greene confronted over old social media posts advocating violence against Democrats and court testimony. So MTG is in court right now because her beliefs are too powerful and too strong. She's too much of a force in Congress to be excuse me, to be allowed to remain in Congress. Right? Elected by the people, but she's an insurrectionist according to these folks. And of course she's not. And she seems like a really sweet lady, actually. She's got a good head on her shoulders, who's a can-do, type of person. And it's a CNN K-Files reported last year that prior to being elected to Congress, Greene had repeatedly indicated support for executing prominent Democratic politicians in 2018 and 2019. Well, that's pretty interesting. That's a pretty interesting statement you would have there, CNN. I wonder if that's ever happened on the left before.
I just don't even know why there aren't uprisings all over the country, and maybe there will be.
People need to start taking to the streets. This is a dictator.
You know, there needs to be unrest in the streets for as long as there's unrest in our lives.
Enemies of the state.
Show me where it says that protests are supposed to be polite and peaceful.
Do something about your dad's immigration practices, you feckless.
When they go low, we kick them.
How do you resist the temptation to run up and wring her neck?
The biggest terror threat in this country is white men, most of them radicalized up to the right.
I thought he should have punched him in the face. I said, even if you lost, he insulted your wife.
Yes.
He came down the escalator and called Mexicans rapists and murderers. He said, well, what do you think I should have done? I said, I think you should have punched him in the face and then gotten out of the race. You would have been a hero.
I'd like to punch him in the face. I said if we were in high school, I'd take him behind the gym and beat the hell out of him.
Punch some people in the face!
When was the last time an actor assassinated a president?
They're still going to have to go out and put a bullet in Donald Trump, and that's a fact.
Look as his character is stabbed to death.
Where is John Wilkes Booth when you need him?
I have thought an awful lot about blowing up the White House.
A Missouri state senator is under investigation by the Secret Service after saying she hopes President Trump is assassinated.
I will go and take Trump out tonight.
And if you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you create a crowd. And you push back on them. And you tell them they're not welcome anymore, anywhere.
And sadly, the domestic enemies to our voting system and our honoring our Constitution are right at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue.
They're not going to stop before Election Day in November, and they're not going to stop after Election Day. And that should be, everyone should take note of that on both levels, that this isn't, they're not going to let up, and they should not.
If you think we're rallying now, you ain't seen nothing yet.
And how did that end, folks? It ended with Antifa members having a shootout with the FBI because at the very end of that video, he just killed a man randomly, a Patriot Prayer individual. Again, this is why I tell you guys not to do these things. Don't do that. Not, you're free will, guys. Do what you want. Get in these little organizations. Be fingered by the Fed. Be put on a no-fly list. Go, get locked up because you went inside the Capitol building and the cops let you in. Go do those dumb things. Or, we can get our stuff together and stop worrying about trying to confront this thing head on because they believe in repressive tolerance and they believe they are justified. And they have all the institutional power. They have all the guns. They have all the jails. They have the ability to put the squeeze on you. So I think it's time to remove yourself from society. That's the intelligent thing to do. I can tell you, you're never going to march on Washington, D.C. or your state house or anywhere else as someone who is liberty-minded and telling the government that they are overstepping their bounds. You're never going to do that in this day and age of our manufactured and synthetic society. It is a foolish thought to do. And I know most people are on board now after they had to have their butts spanked at the incident on January 6th. And then people got locked up and put in solitary confinement. People are put on no-fly lists. And the Democrats still go around. And here we have Marjorie Taylor Greene being held in a court hearing to see if she can run for people who elected her because she incited this and that. Absolutely absurd. Holly says, I forgot about all this. Well, yeah, that's what happens. So many things. And that's part of the problem too, guys. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm media obsessed. Obviously, it's part of why I do this, right? Because it's my way to take what I'm seeing in the media then and throw it out there. And I'm glad you guys are here to watch me. I'd be doing it if you weren't. Be talking to one person if I had to. It doesn't matter. But Like, we, in this constant media cycle, this constant feed of the news, are being curated. We're being bred. We're being directed in a way of thinking and doing. And it's not you acting. It's a projection of people above you into acting. And it's a manufactured consensus where everyone gets along and says, hey, that guy is not wearing a mask. Put on your mask. Everybody else has to do it. Right? I mean, even I'm a pretty bold guy, but it's not like I'm like, up in people's faces all the time or anything. I'm just saying, I'm not very shy per se. I can be very outgoing if I need to be. But even me, I would wear masks in some situations. I generally did not wear one. Didn't wear one most of the pandemic, but in some situations I would wear one just to avoid the confrontation. But that's also part of my religion. I don't believe in making confrontation. I believe in peacemaking. But what we're seeing now is that because of the masks, there's a huge amount of microplastics being found in people's lungs. And I talked about this way back when. I might have got, pretty sure it did, a video taken down because I talked about that. Oh, you're denying the science, not real science. Yeah, okay. And fact checkers are always correct too. And the skeptics, they're always correct. Michael Shermer, for years, could not stand that guy. I like him now because he's against the wokeism. Could not stand that guy, Skeptic Magazine, Michael Shermer, because all he did was, I'm a skeptic, so I'm going to go with the mainstream narrative. That's not skepticism, buddy. It's not skepticism at all. At the hearing, Green initially denied she had called House Speaker Nancy Pelosi a traitor to our country. Well, I'll say it. Nancy Pelosi is a traitor to our country. She only cares about herself. She's been selling it out for years. She has enriched herself, and she doesn't care about any of her constituents. I'll say it. And if I'm ever in Congress, I'll stick to it. She is a traitor. It doesn't matter. You can say those things about people. It's called free speech. And it's true. Maybe not our country. I mean, it's bold, but to the Constitution, absolutely. To her duties, absolutely. Green eventually admitted to having said that about Pelosi as the attorney questioning the Congresswoman put it up on the exhibit in earmarks. Oh, wow. Wait, hold on now. Green quickly interjected. Oh, no, wait, hold on now. I believe it that by not securing the border, that violates her oath of office. Right. There's context, right? And so this goes on, talks about all these things. She's a traitor to her country. She's guilty of treason. Green says in 2019 video, which she posted to Facebook at the time before the video was removed, she took an oath to protect American citizens and uphold her laws, and she doesn't. Nancy Pelosi doesn't. She doesn't care about that. And she gives aid and comfort to her enemies who illegally invade her land. That's all true. That's what treason is. I mean, treason has a technical definition, but whatever. It's hyperbole. All of this, right? Who cares? Who cares? But yep, she's in court. Attempted to bar her from Congress. And I do believe she's going to win, but then we have, of course, here, Robbie Starbuck. Now, I'm not like some big fan of his or anything like that, but he's better than what we've had in there. And there he is, of course, with Madison Cawthorn. And if you didn't know, from Timcast, exclusive candidate Robbie Starbuck responds to being kicked off Tennessee ballot. Kicked off the ballot, guys. He's not Republican enough. You think that we have a government or society that can be turned around by going into the institutions? Do you really think that? Are you that stupid and naive? No chance. I'm not saying you shouldn't try and vote for good people. You need to think locally, and beyond thinking locally, you need to think about your exit strategy. This is not going to get better. It might appear to get better. I'm hoping the midterms, after that happens, some things get a little bit better. Wait till everyone forgets, though. Well, Donald Trump will be president again, probably in 2024. And then once that passes, 2028 will come along, and we're going to vote in a Democrat. Maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe we'll get Ron DeSantis. Maybe things will be better, but I doubt it. I don't want to be pessimistic, but I am, because I've watched this stuff for a very, very long time. I hear, like, this is where we're looking at Timcast right now. I hear Tim Pool, he doesn't say it so much anymore. He used to talk about the religious right. I used to hear people talk about it all the time. I'm like, what are you talking about? You have no clue. That is like a 10% of all Republicans, the religious right. And basically they had power for 10 years, a moment in time. They didn't have a lot of power. It was mostly about pornography. Later in the early 90s, it was about obscenities and music and all that and video games. It went away pretty quickly because most people were like, stop it. You're being ridiculous. Let these kids be kids. But maybe they weren't completely ridiculous. I don't know. I don't want to ban things, though. I don't think that's the way you go about it. I think when you make things taboo, people seek them out. I think that when you give people freedom and you give them responsibility, you actually foster more responsibility. But when you strip them of that, you make them weak, you take away their dignity, and they must become reliant and dependent, and they become weak, ignorant, and feeble. And that's everything the left wants to do to you. See. That's about the best I'm going to get that. So Robbie Starbuck, Morgan Ortagus, and Baxter Lee were all disqualified from the upcoming primary after the party's vote on April 19th. They did not meet the standards for bona fide Republicans. The candidacy was challenged earlier this month, triggering a vote by the state election committee. It's insane. And folks, I know that the easiest way is to go and to infiltrate the Republican Party and whatever. Maybe we need to start focusing on independence, right? Not being affiliated with a party. When the parties do these things, they censure their people and such. The candidacy was challenged earlier this month, triggering a vote by the state election committee. According to the bylaws, a candidate is required to have a vote in 3 of the last 4 Republican primaries, or to have state Republicans vouch for them. The idea that I am not a Republican is most offensive, because if I am not, who the hell is? Starbuck said for an interview with Timcast. Starbuck, a music video producer who moved to Tennessee from California, said he had been a registered Republican for his entire life and has only donated to Republican candidates. He said his extensive track record included a political event that he and his wife have organized to support local Republican candidates. The 33-year-old said he had 14 vouching letters affirming his status as a Republican, including statements from several county party chairs and the leaders of the Nashville Young Republicans. He was endorsed by the U.S. Senator Rand Paul in 2021. Starbuck largely attributed the party's vote to institutional corruption, believing that Republican leaders in the state would prefer a controllable rhino, he said. Absolutely. Also, rhinos tend to be people who are business people with well-established connections. Majority of these folks are lawyers, but some lawyers have side businesses as well and such. Regardless, you're getting somebody who has corporate connections. And I don't think that's necessarily bad if you're an ethical person. The problem is we don't have very many ethical people in the world today, where there's a severe lacking of it. Severe lacking. I mean, I mentioned earlier about you maybe needing to lose your job because you're willing to put yourself out there. It doesn't mean you have to put yourself out there completely, wholly. You need to give everyone your last name, your social security number, your address, your date of birth, and your bank account number, as well as a pen. No, I'm not saying that. But if you don't have any real skin in the game, you're not in this fight, guys. You're just not. You're just listening to people complain on YouTube, and you're not in the fight. You have to have real stakes in the game. It has to be real. And that's part of being an ethical person too, is being willing to put yourself on the line. And I know that this is I take a hard stance on this, controversial with a lot of people. A lot of people have gotten on Tim Pool for taking the same stance. I agree with Tim. You must stand up. Now, trolling and memeing and all that, that's good too. That needs to happen. But that's a strategy. That's a tactic in the overall battlefield. But unless we adopt the tactic of being an actual voice and an actual force, then I don't know how we can actually accomplish anything. And again, like I said, it's not going to come from the institutions that are already controlled. The long march has already taken place. Go watch my stream from 3 weeks ago or something, when I talked about the grooming the revolution. It says, in particular, he said Andrew Ogles, the mayor of Murray County, who entered a congressional race on 2022, is an institutional favorite who could fake being American first. And in fact, that might be the guy who got, I think Trump ended up endorsing that person. I might be wrong about that, but whatever, if he did or didn't, Trump's just trying to play the game, right? He compares the Tennessee Republican Party's vote to political corruption in Cuba, where his family originated originated before fleeing to America. In Cuba, they had the Central Committee, Starbucks said, noting that the committee would select candidates and run sham elections. Yeah, just like the communist and just like the fascist, because they're the same freaking thing. But Bill, the fascists were capitalists. No, they weren't. They were syndicalists. And so are communists. Because a syndicate is nothing more than a co-op. It's the same freaking thing, or a union. Now, I get it. A co-op means that people own it together. They cooperate it, right? Doesn't generally work, folks. Doesn't generally work very well. You have to have good partners. That's why businesses need leaders. Hierarchy, the nature of this reality, needs leaders. Right? Can't have everybody switching different jobs all the time and doing different things and blah, blah, blah. You have to appropriately put your good people where they belong. This was understood when I was in the Marine Corps. I was taking my Marines and giving them appropriate tasks for their skill levels and for what they're good at. I'm not going to give the very calculated, intelligent task to the guy who doesn't know how to fill out his checkbook or balance his budget, right? I'm not going to do it. But that guy could probably fill some sandbags just fine. And you have to understand that people have strengths and weaknesses. Now, I embrace all of mine. I talk about them on here all the time, right? You get to hear it. I try and read aloud. But it's just the nature of our reality. And people want to feel special. They don't want to have any flaws. This is narcissism. It's insularity to your ego to deny that you have flaws. And it's not psychologically healthy, folks, in any way, shape, or form. Let's keep going. He said that removing him from the ballot, despite his numerous vouching letters, could demoralize voters and likely have a long-term consequence for the party. Absolutely, because it's the same thing as fortification. It's the same thing. It's just from the Republicans. Since the committee's vote became public, hundreds of his supporters have reached out to him to express their frustration and anger. Then you need to stop voting for these people. You need to campaign. You need to yourself start an organization. You need to do things. And stop listening to people bitch on the internet. Do something. I'm literally trying to write a book, run a stream, have a full-time job, raise a child, start an LLC, and whatever else. You all can do a little bit more, I think. I don't think I'm not the only one doing things, obviously. But I'm saying you need to do more. You need to figure something out. You need to figure out a way to get in this fight to prevent these things from happening. And if you live in Tennessee, then you need to campaign hard to get these folks out who would do this. The Tennessee Republican Party will regret this for a long time, he said. Elections are supposed to be the will of the people. The party's action has disenfranchised their own voters. He said the SEC vote shows voters and the party no longer shares their values. When asked why he has gained much strong support in Tennessee, Starbucks said, "I've been willing to fight when other people won't fight." Yeah. Starbuck and his team are currently exploring every legal option while they consider how to proceed, and that one way or another, he will appear on the ballot in Tennessee. Just go as an independent, dude. Just run as an independent. Of course, Tim is friends with Robbie, but we have it from Breitbart as well. GOP insiders in Tennessee reinterpret party bylaws to kick Trump-backed congressional candidate off ballot. He's too dangerous to be allowed on the ballot. He doesn't agree with the establishment. Yeah. Let's see. Ratios in California flipped a long time ago, much like Maryland, which has a 2-to-1 ratio, Dem versus Republican. Yeah, well, the Dems in Maryland aren't real. Or sorry, the Republicans in Maryland aren't real Republicans, guy. So it's like that's been my take of it for forever. Larry Hogan, for instance, right on the Maryland border practically. It's where I grew up. He ain't a Republican, folks. But neither is old Jim Justice, my governor. So let's see. I know I had a couple more things here. Knock that out. Oh, yeah. This is going to be a short one. We're going to talk about it though. We're about to get a little sexy up in here, guys. So divert your eyes if you're a prude. So there's several articles of this going around, but we get these about every month or so. I see streamers covering them or something, or I come across them when I'm looking at news articles, stuff that gets recommended, right? Because things get pushed along out there in the algorithms because they're trying to curate what you see and how you think. So this is part of the manufacturing of our society. Neuroscience college grad turns back on career, makes more than doctor parents on OnlyFans. I actually met up in Burlington, Vermont, old Bernie Sanders land. I was at the airport, sat next to this girl, very lovely girl, not this one on the screen, but who was a neuroscientist in school up there at the college, and very attractive lady. Aren't the leftists always wanting to push people in the STEM? It's kind of hard to understand where this is going, but yes, this very bright young lady could have been a neuroscientist, but instead she decided to be a stripper and on OnlyFans. And I mean, she's gorgeous in my book. She's got a beautiful face. But let's see. It says a 21-year-old British college grad has turned her back on her future neuroscience career in order to become a stripper and OnlyFans e-girl, tabloids report. While Mercedes Valentine graduated from the university with a degree in neuroscience, she's decided to exchange examining synapses for exploiting men willing to pay and earn almost more than both her parents' combined income. So, and this girl was a gymnast and then got into pole dancing, and yeah, she decided that her value and her worth wasn't in her intellect. It wasn't in her ability to procreate as a mother. It was to be a whore on the internet. Because that's what this is. This is the world's oldest profession coming back around, and it's empowering. It's empowering, folks. The Hari says, yes, beautiful face. Yeah, no, I mean, she's a smoke show. My wife is very pretty. We had our first date anniversary Friday, and my wife doesn't ever wear makeup. She got all dressed up, and I mean, she's a smoke show when she gets made up. But when I met her, I was like, all right, okay, I did good. This it was like the Matrix, the lady in the red dress, except for she wore a green dress, and she's walking through the crowd. I saw her from a block away. Hadn't met her because I met her online to like, go out on a date with her, and saw her walking up, and I was like, wow, okay, I did good. I said, I did good. Hopefully this goes well. And within first 10 minutes, she's like, can I hold your hand? And I was like, oh, okay, I like how this is going. And by the end of our first date, she's like, yeah, I could be your girlfriend. And I was like, all right, let's do it. Let's be Facebook official. And we've been together since 4 years. 4 years. Got married in 4 months. But anyways, my wife, she's not into like using her beauty is making that her sole thing in life, right? I mean, she literally was a model as a teen, quit because of stuff like that. She didn't like it. So it speaks a lot to her character. But anyways, I bring this up because this is the real headline I wanted to bring up. Rare condition makes woman one of the top earners on OnlyFans. What? The rare condition does not. So this young lady actually has a battle of a battle with adversity that she had in her life. She actually was crippled for quite a long period, apparently. The woman turned her back on promising career as a neuroscientist to become a pole dancer and a stripper, and now earns more than her wealthy parents. Mercedes Valentine, 21, has swapped a uniform of lab coats and saucy underwear, for saucy underwear, which has landed her a position in the top 0.1% of creators on the adult content site OnlyFans. Well, I mean, when you have a face like that, it's probably helpful. Most girls don't, although they might be good with the camera angles and stuff. But I don't know why this is celebrated. The interesting thing is she had a neurological condition. Having been diagnosed with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome when she was 15, she was left needing a wheelchair and having to relearn how to walk again. After 2 years of strenuous physical therapy, Mercedes was mobile again and prepared to follow in her parents' footsteps, entering into the world of medicine by studying neuroscience. Here's going to be some scandalous pictures, folks. But pumped with a newfound energy, she joined the university gym and signed up for a weekly pole dancing lesson. When she finished her degree, a friend from her pole dancing class suggested she give stripping a go at a local bar, and Mercedes never looked back. I mean, she got a nice rear. I'm a butt man, guys. It's all them gymnastics, though. And it says, since embarking on the world of stripping and OnlyFans, she sees an earnings of up to $1,000 a night. Mercedes has now earned more than her doctor parents, $200,000 combined. This is pounds. So I'm saying dollars. I meant to say pounds, which is worth more than dollars, if I am not mistaken. I have no regret. I absolutely love it. Because of my condition, my joints are more bendy, so I was able to pick up pole dancing. That's why. So because she's a little bit more flexible, which a lot of women are. A lot of women have hypermobile joints, but because of that, she's the top OnlyFans star. Now, when I read this headline, it sounds to me as if, hey, you're physically handicapped. So is this lady. Look at her and her OnlyFans career. Should we not be encouraging for this woman to, okay, she finished college, fine, whatever. Have a family, like not everyone has to do that, but she's young and she's beautiful. Now would be a good time to find a nice man, right? Maybe a young man in his late 20s or early 30s who's mature enough and has a career stable enough to support her. But who really wants her when she's shown all of her goods to everybody? Some people don't care. Some people don't mind. Now, you guys don't know everything about my past, but I was a womanizer to some degree. No, I wasn't always, but I had a very traumatic first marriage that left me soulless for a while, and I did some stupid things. And in that, I chased women, and part of that is I've dated girls who were strippers and whatever else. They're all screwed up, folks. Every single one of them. You don't just do that and show your most intimate parts of yourself to all of the world and not have some deeper issues. Now, maybe some people are just free and okay, being naked. What's the I'm thinking of the Blurred Lines girl, Emily Ratajkowski, because she does it for me. I like brunettes. She's very, very hot in my opinion, right? That I think her whole career was made off of being topless, basically. That's the interesting thing, that your life is based off of a singular physical attribute, or just a physical attribute about yourself. And that is not repressive, according to the left, because she's doing it and it's empowering. But yet, if a man were to objectify her, if a man were to objectify this lady, right, without her consent, it's rape. But it's empowering when she does it, basically being a whore. I mean, basically being a prostitute, right? For lack of a better terminology. She's not actually having sex with men, but then again, I don't know. I don't know what kind of content she's making. It's quite strange to me that this is promoted on a monthly basis. And it's like, look, girls, you too can be a whore. The epitome of society. Stupid is the young woman whom banks her entire worth on what will fade. Yes, I thought the same thing, Holly. I thought the same thing. But, with age brings wisdom. And, you've gained some wisdom. I've gained some wisdom. No, this lady is probably going to hit, I hope not, for her sake. But women start to generally, when they're this pretty, when they're that young, tend to hit the wall around 25, 26, 27. And you're running out of options. You're really running out of options to find a good man by that point. You want to have kids? The number one thing is having kids, man. My wife's 11 years younger than me for a reason. I wanted to have kids. I knew what age range I could put up with because I've dated a lot of 22-year-olds. I can't deal with that anymore. I'm too old for that. But I could put up with a 25-year-old, or 26 when I met her. I could put up with that. That prefrontal cortex had developed. My wife had just done some spiritual work. We've grown a lot together too. We've had our issues. All couples have issues, folks. You're enjoining your life with another person who has a completely different background. Mind you, this was less difficult in years prior, in centuries prior, because people tended to have more similar lifestyles. But we lived in an atomized society. We lived in a society that is overly focused on individuality or overly focused on collectivism. It's one extreme or the other. There's no real balance to that, right? But yeah, the idea too that you too could be an OnlyFans princess if you're disabled. All right, I guess I'm gonna bring up the next two things, and then I'm gonna get out of here. These are gonna be quick. I kind of buried them at the end. Wanted to give you guys a couple like white pills, maybe. And I don't know if this is much of a white pill, but again, in the social media sphere, and in this hyper reality and in the things that have happened, that have occurred with that, in this manufacturing of our society, people get hurt and they get injured. And sometimes they do stupid things and it's their fault. Now, I don't know if you guys know who Coach Red Pill is. I brought him up on here before, but he's in Ukraine right now. And he was missing the other week. So Gonzola Lira, who is Chilean, I do believe he may or does have American citizenship, but he lives abroad. Was detained by the Ukrainian authorities for less time than Tamara Lynch and Pat King were detained by Canadian authorities. Let that sink in. Yeah. Anyways, he went missing. He was apparently detained, and there were, a lot of people wondering what's going on with him. Where's he at? But the other day, this video finally surfaced. He does seem to be okay. I'm going to play it for you real quick. He said he was detained. Could not hold him. They could not hold him forever, I guess. I don't know. Was this manufactured? Could this be fake? Sure. I doubt that he wants to fake something like that, though. The Daily Beast wrote an article about him, and he made a video responding to it saying they are trying to get me killed. So real quick, let's listen to this. Hopefully you guys will be able to hear it. Let me know. If not, maybe I can rip it. There we go.
No one's watching. No one's watching, man. Oh no, here's some people. Okay, well, it doesn't matter. This, the recording. Yeah, we're recording. But I'll give you 5 minutes.
Dahari, you say no volume. But is that in the very beginning when the volume was low? Because you got to realize you're about a minute behind me.
April 22nd, 2022. I'm in Kharkov. I'm okay. I just want to say that I'm back online, and I'm here with Alex Christoforou, and I just want to say that I'm fine physically. I'm a little rattled. I was picked up by the SBU on Friday, April 15th at a little after 1 p.m. local time. I'm okay physically. I'm a little rattled. There seems to have been like a lot of interest in my case, which is wonderful. Thank you. But there are a lot of other people who are frankly more deserving of the attention. I've highlighted them in my Twitter feed, the real Gonzalo Lira. Those people matter more.
All right. So, if you couldn't hear him, he was saying that, there are other people that deserve more, more praise than him. Here, I'm going to, there you go, Dahari. That should now be in the chat, that link to that video. You turn your volume all the way up. Yeah. All right. So, anyways, many who were following the events in Ukraine closely were receptive to voices outside the mainstream, started to follow Gonzalo Lira, Chilean American commentator who was in Kiev. Now, I've been subbed to Coach Red Pill for a long time. He's got a channel called with his name, because Gonzola Lira. I can't say that, guys. It's too much. Anyways, it says, so I came across this stuff immediately. He started talking about Ukraine, and I was like, here we go. And actually, if you guys want to know more about Ukraine, you want some more depth, more background, I've told you before to go check his stuff out, do your homework. Go over to Aiden Paladin's channel. She just released a video. Ukraine explained everything you want to know, and and you were afraid to ask. She does a very good video here. It's, 2 hours long of Ukrainian history, Ukraine and Russia, and the NATO question. Of course, Aiden's a friend of mine. It's not like we're besties or anything. We don't talk I haven't talked to Aiden in a while, actually. But Aiden's a friend, but she does great work. So go check it out if you want to know more about what's going on over there, if you feel like you are not well educated. And in any case, it says that he was giving updates both for his personal experience and a wider political theme. He has warned that he might be targeted by the SBU for his increasingly critical comments about the Zelensky regime, which is what they do. I follow many a Telegram channel from over there, and there's a lot of disappearing of people, especially journalists. And so he said, go follow the real Gonzalo Lira, because apparently the other his original channel is not available. His original Twitter, that is. So there's this. And of course, it comes up right as I pull this up. Undercover operative in Kiev that's currently celebrating with Azov Nazis the disappearance of Gonzalo Lira and calling for Patrick Lancaster to be dealt with too. Yeah, this is what happens. So I'm telling you guys, this, Ukraine's a screwed up place. So let's be happy that Coach Red Pill made it out. But here is another one from Max Blumenthal. Now, Max is on the Jimmy Dore show all the time, but Max is actually, for a lefty, a pretty decent journalist. And this would be the real Gonzalo Lira, I guess, the new account. It says, he has indeed been disappeared by Ukraine's SBU. He joins a long list of dissentists, leftists, human rights activists, and local officials kidnapped, tortured, and even assassinated by Zelensky's death squad, and with Kiev's open support. When we talk about manufacturing the opinions of everyone, this is not an opinion that is appropriate, right? You're not allowed to talk about this stuff. If you say this, you talk about this, you're a conspiracy theorist, right? And the mainstream media isn't covering it all. We're all just supposed to support Ukraine. One less traitor, Zelensky's overseas campaign of assassination, kidnapping, and torture of political opposition. April 17th. Of course, we have that weird photo of Zelensky there, that photo shoot. While claiming to defend democracy, Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky has outlawed his opposition, ordered his rivals' arrest, and presides over the disappearance and assassination of dissidents across the country. This is the primary claim about why Vladimir Putin is a bad guy. I guarantee you, Zelensky is 1,000 times worse. I mean, for God's sake, he is wanting to be part of the New World Order. He wants to have NATO in his house. It's like I don't trust people that like that kind of stuff. I'm very wary of those folks. The Hari says, Ukraine has been corrupted for a very long time. Of course it has. It's because it's been run by oligarchs and commies. Communism wasn't good. By the way, that Aiden talks about the you guys have to understand Ukraine's history with Nazis too. She talks about that in that video. Goes back to the Nazis, goes back to Nazi Germany for real. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has framed his country's war against Russia as a battle for democracy itself. Communism, folks. oligarchy, not democracy. That's what democracy is, by the way. It is communism. It always has been, always was. If you're talking about fully democratic, I can fully impose upon you, 51% majority. That's exactly what it is. It's not good. Democracy is good for a few things, very few things. In a careful, choreographed address to the U.S. Congress on March 16th, Zelensky said, right now, the destiny of our country is being decided, the destiny of our people, whether Ukrainians will be free, whether they will be able to preserve their democracy, which they don't have. U.S. corporate media has responded by showering Zelensky with fawning press. It's because they love power and oligarchy and the New World Order and all of these things. That's why, because he's part of the system. They don't care that he's a Nazi because they know, I don't even know if he is a Nazi, but, militia supporters, right? As all those guys. They know that it's the same thing. That's a false dichotomy. That it's a synthetic world, that they're grooming everybody, not just your children, everybody to this global governance. Want to draw everybody in, want to pull them in and direct the way that they think to control them. Because there is no truth to these people. There's only consensus. It says, driving a campaign for his nomination for the Nobel Peace Prize and inspiring a flamboyant musical tribute to himself and the Ukrainian military during the 2022 Grammy Award ceremony on April 3rd. This is sick. It's like, it's the entertainment aspect of that is being implemented into this, the Hollywood aspect. Like, I tried to make light of it on the Justify the Memes the other week, where there were, I think they were Georgian models who came in during the war and took pictures and then got shot by a tank. I tried to make light of it, but I couldn't, because we're in such a crazy, manufactured, fake, synthetic, matrix-like world that people think it's okay to go to a war zone and take Instagram pictures. That's insane. And they paid with their lives. Very young women with their lives ahead of them paid for it because they're foolish, because they don't understand the difference between the real world and the fake world. Western media has looked the other way. However, as Zelensky, top officials in his administration have sanctioned a campaign of kidnapping, torture, and assassinations of local Ukrainian lawmakers accused of collaborating with Russia. Several mayors and other Ukrainian officials have been killed since the outbreak of the war, many reportedly by Ukrainian state agents after engaging in de-escalation talks with Russia. They don't want de-escalation, folks. They want the war. This is a manufactured war. I'm not saying the war is fake itself. People are dying. The war is real. The circumstances of the war are what is manufactured. There's one less traitor in Ukraine, Internal Affairs Minister Advisor Anton Gerashenko. I can do these Slavic names better. I'm more acquainted with them. Gerashenko stated in endorsement of the murder of the Ukrainian mayor accused of collaborating with Russia. Zelensky has further exploited the atmosphere of war by outlawing an array of opposition parties and order the arrest of his leading rivals. His authoritarian decree has triggered the disappearance, torture, and even murder of an array of human rights activists, communist, and leftist organizers. Well, I'm sure Blumenthal would enjoy, because he signs with them. He signs with that part of the left. I mean, this is a guy who's good friends with Jimmy Dore. You have to understand that. Now, I like Jimmy Dore because he exposes the truth, but Jimmy's a nutbag who's super rich and thinks that people shouldn't make choices for themselves. Literally complained It's like my favorite example that I've seen of his. Complained that a woman driving an Uber who was in labor had to keep driving before she took a fare or two on her way to the hospital. That was that woman's choice. It's a poor woman. She had to take another ride on the way to the hospital just to afford healthcare. That's your assumption. That's 100% your assumption. You don't have to, I go to work in pain or sick all the time. And I don't mean like super sick. If I have a fever, I'm throwing up, I'm not going to work, but I mean not feeling well. I mean, I practically live in pain, not all the time. I've been doing a lot better about mitigating that and doing the exercises I need to do to keep up with things. But for years, I lived in pain. You just do what you're supposed to do, though, right? You drive forward. You can choose to be the person doing things, taking life by the balls, if you would, right? In getting things done, or you can choose to watch everything pass you by, and you can complain because you had an ingrown, toenail or something. I can't go to work today. I know those people. I've met them. I've worked with them. No, some of my former employers, when I worked at the sheriff's department, they might think the same thing about me, which is absurd. Because they punished everybody if they ever took sick leave ever, even though, when you work in a jail and the flu comes through, everybody gets the flu or whatever it is. And the flu shot doesn't always work. And I've been more sick from a flu shot before often than the flu. So whatever. The Ukrainian SUB security service has served as an enforcement arm of the officially authorized campaign of the repression, with training from the CIA in close coordination with Ukrainian state-backed neo-Nazi paramilitaries. That's kind of interesting. CIA got mentioned in that. Find that funny at all? Those of you who weren't here at the beginning, I mentioned a little bit about the CIA in the beginning of the show. There's a lot here, though. I've been streaming for nearly 3 hours. Anyways, the SBU has spent the past week filling its vast archipelago of torture dungeons and political dissidents. On the battlefield, meanwhile, the Ukrainian military has engaged in a series of atrocities against captured Russian troops and proudly exhibited its sadistic acts on social media. Here, too, the perpetrators of human rights abuses appear to have received approval from within the upper echelons of the Ukrainian leadership. So, yeah. And you can read the rest of it if you'd like. I'm just happy that Coach Red Pill's alive and well and all of that. Here's that other article I ended up pulling up. This undercover operative says she recruited the Proud Boys for the GOP. I doubt it. I really doubt it. A transgender poker player and progressive activist who went undercover and cozied up to the right-wing extremist, a state Republican Party desperate to see Donald Trump win, a Vegas-based GOP consult the Proud Boys. The Proud Boys they're a freaking joke fraternity. Like, that our media is curated, manufactured, and people's opinions are completely synthetic when you're pointing to the Proud Boys, who are just a bunch of guys who like to go get drunk and that are chauvinist. That word comes from the French Revolution. And Chauvin was a follower of Napoleon well after his exile and everything else. So the word chauvinist became synonymous with national pride and all this other stuff. Right? So this bizarre backstory connecting a far-right paramilitary group. They're not a paramilitary group. What insanity is this? Right? Again, you're saying the Proud Boys. The bizarre story connecting a far-right paramilitary group to an effort in Nevada to pressure election officials to overturn the 2020 elections. Yeah, they didn't. No one wanted to overturn the election. That's the thing. They wanted it properly certified. When you don't properly certify an election, there's nothing to overturn. You have to confirm the election before you can overturn it. And you didn't do that. Now, did you? No, no one did that. They knew what they were doing. They pushed it through, and we had massive strategic fortification. In the months leading up to 2020 election, Sarah Ashton Crilio, a self-described progressive activist, embedded in GOP circles as part of her research for a book on right-wing extremism. Really? What is the right-wing extremism that's going on that your book's going to be about, by the way? People getting together in groups and talking about how they don't like the government, how we need to build our own systems. But now what the left always says, build your own. Then when you come in like Elon Musk, they don't like that. They don't like that at all. They don't like losing. There's only one moral for them. There's one ethic, folks. It's win. It's win at all costs. At least someone like Vosh is honest about that. He's honest about being a sophist. These guys were too stupid to look at my progressive politics, Ashton Crilio told the Daily Beast in a phone interview this week, because they were eager to tokenize me. I doubt it. I doubt it. I think that maybe you're not telling the truth in this, considering you just said that the Proud Boys are a paramilitary organization. Anyways, it says Ashton infiltrated only started last September and began with more mainstream Republican groups. She went to September 12th Trump boat rally on Lake Mead. I bet that was a great time. The next night, like you went out and had a bunch of drinks and hung out with people in the sun on the river or the lake. I mean, that's awesome. The next night, she attended a Trump rally where the MAGA supporters recognized her from her days as a top flight Vegas poker player. It was at the rally where she first really connected with GOP officials and donors. By December, Nevada GOP State Party Chairman Michael McDonald was in her home discussing future Republican strategies. And the next month, the Proud Boys were asking her to be a hostess for a rally in solidarity with January 6th. The insurrectionist. She declined. Okay, so she's done nothing. She's going to write a book about these people that's going to be full of lies and nonsense. But sure, I mean, I presume, I could be wrong. It was only a couple months into undercover voyage as a Republican, Woodrow Johnston, the vice president of Las Vegas-based consulting firm, yada, 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 contacted her about getting the Proud Boys involved in their efforts to pressure Nevada ballot counters. And it goes on. According to text she shared with the Daily Beast, that should give you some indication about the trash she's going to write. Johnston wanted to stage a similar event in Vegas. Okay. Gozer is leading the charge on the Brooks Brothers riot down in Arizona, Johnston said, referring to the GOP protest in Florida during the 2020 election. We might need to do the same here in Nevada, which means we need to get the Proud Boys out. Okay. Brooks Brothers riot. I don't even... You guys know I know all kinds of stuff. I don't even know. I don't remember that. What is that? Why? I'm literally looking this up on Wiki. I don't know what it is. Don't remember this happening. Demonstration and meeting of election canvassers in Miami-Dade County, Florida on November 20th, 2020. During the recount of the votes made by... This was not mainstream news. Sorry, I'd have remembered if it was a big deal. Anyways. She knew exactly who to contact. She turned around and sent the messages to Telegram group of far-right activists, including the leader of a Las Vegas Proud Boys chapter. Just received this from the GOP. They're asking me to potentially gather the boys and to all the patriots and lead a literal nonviolent charge on the county elections office. Okay, yeah, because that's what the right does. Support would come from the state party. Okay. The right's allowed to protest too. Now, I think it's stupid that you do. I think all protest is stupid, generally. I mean, unless you're going to organize, unless something is happening to you, you know, like lockdowns in Australia and everyone then protests, that's a different thing. But for the most part, it doesn't do anything. But a few hours later, Johnston told Ashton to pump the brakes. Damn, we're not getting the green light, he said. And so forth. Anyways, I don't know. I brought this up because it looked interesting. I wasn't planning on talking about this today. This looks like there's actually nothing in it, though. Right? It says, while the Proud Boys never actually stormed the Clark County Elections Office, 2 days after the text exchange, a Proud Boy banner flew at a contentious rally outside the building. Oh, no! They flew a banner! Everyone run for the hills! A flag flied! It wasn't the gay trans flag either. It wasn't the pedo flag. It was the Proud Boy flag. How dare they? Anyway, sorry, I like this kind of completely went sideways here because I was like, what is this? I have yet to see anything in there. Maybe I'll bring this up next week. Because it is like 6 o'clock, folks. So, and I want to get off of here soon. Let's see. What do I got left? Sorry, guys. I'm looking for my close my bookmarks. And I have a lot of bookmarks. A lot of them. Do this. Bring it over here. Yeah, I want to see it easier this way. Just want to make sure I got to everything I really wanted to get to today. Ah, okay. There it is. Ah, yes. Yes. See, I'm glad I did this. All right. So before I get out, this will be very brief. But you may recall me mentioning in the past about, and very recently actually on stream, about the archaeological evidence for Christianity, for Judaism, for the ancient faith that still exists today. And for quite some time after the Enlightenment, people decided, well, you're not, that none of this is real because we can't find the archaeological evidence. And in fact, in some cases, some scholars believe that the Jews made up all of the Old Testament around 500 BC-ish or something like that, 600 BC, something like that, and created a whole narrative about their existence. Well, my friends, guess what? You can't find things in the past from thousands of years ago all the time. But we have we have found things. And one of the things that was found was the cursed tablet. So this is something I've been wanting to talk about for a couple of weeks, but just didn't fit in with anything I could talk about. You can't curse what God has blessed. So what is the cursed tablet? I don't know why it's so warning to anti-Semites, but well, that is this little thing, this little tiny tablet's about the size of my thumb. It's like an inch by inch square, or centimeter by a centimeter square, something like that. Very small. And what it is it is an iron tablet that is inscribed with Proto-Hebrew. And it says the name Yahweh in it. And it says Mount Ebal, which is in the Bible. This curse is actually in the Bible. And it is dated some 3,400 years ago. The God of Israel renewed a covenant with the Israelites upon their entrance into the promised land in a solemn ceremony involving two mountains, Mount Ebal and Mount was it Gerizim? Gerizim? Old Hebrew word. It's not easy to say. Not for me, at least. Half the Israelites tribes stood at Mount Gerizim, or whatever it's called, representing blessings for obedience, and the other 6 tribes stood at Mount Ebal, representing curses that would befall the nation for disobedience. And that's pretty interesting too, right? 6 out of the 12 tribes. So half. The recent discovery of the ancient curse tablet corroborates this biblical narrative, and I believe it is the very deep spiritual significance for our generation. Archaeologists sifting through debris from Mount Ebal in biblical Samaria made one of the most significant discoveries. The now already famous folded curse tablet, dating back to the late Bronze Age, bears one of the Proto-Hebrew names of God. Dr. Scott Stripling and the team of associates at the Biblical Research uncovered the tablet in late 2019 and have begun releasing their findings for every 3 years of painstaking research. In the book of Deuteronomy and in the book of Joshua, Mount Ebal is described as a place where the Israelites agreed that those who broke God's law would be cursed, while the adjacent Mount Gerizim represents the blessings they would receive through obedience. The inscription represents a large binding document, a covenant that was made between the ancient Israelites and God of Israel, who promised to bless them if they kept the terms of the covenant as recorded in Deuteronomy 27 and 28. And I know this is the Jerusalem Post, and it mentioned anti-Semitism. What you need to understand, oh dear Jew, is he also cursed you. He said that you would be a byword amongst the nations. You would be scoffed at, and you would be kicked out of all the nations for the rest of this world. That's in the Bible. You were cursed. Your people were cursed, and they were cursed because they didn't follow God. So, and the fact that half of the nations went to one mountain, half to the other, much like I talked about the other week in examining yourself, your self-examination. You know, the church has a lot of people in it that are going to be surprised one day that they're not really in it. The tablet says, cursed, 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 cursed by God, Yahweh. You will die, cursed, cursed. You will surely die, cursed by Yahweh, cursed, cursed. According to Stripling, the ominous inscription confirms the biblical account of Mount Ebal and said that the discovery is a 10 on the scale of 1 to 10. To find the name of God written twice on such an ancient artifact is historic from this early time period. We're talking about 1300 BC, 1500 BC. That is, 3,500 years ago-ish. Of course, I had another article here from Live Science. They talk about how they got it open, describe it more in the size versus the religious significance. But I bring this up because scoffers beware. It's a pretty incredible little tablet there. But scoffers beware. You come up, yeah, it's 2.5 centimeters. So I was right. It's about an inch by an inch. You say these things don't exist and they aren't real, and you wish to bring everyone into your misery, your belief system, because you're stuck in the matrix. You're stuck in the synthetic world. You're stuck in the thought process that isn't yours. It's curated for you. And you're mad that I'm free, that I am liberated. I don't have any other explanation. You want me to be just as miserable. And I know Strippy hasn't been on the Entropy in a bit. I haven't seen him at least. But, you know, there you go. There you have a crazed individual who would like to convince me that there is no God, says that him and his people, the gays, are under attack all the time, right? That the gays are under attack and they're oppressed and blah, 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 blah. And that right-wingers like me just want to murder them. And then proceeds to tell me that there is no God. Well, if that belief of yours was true, that right-wingers like me want to murder you, which it isn't true, but maybe there are a handful of them, telling me that there isn't a God isn't a very smart thing, because the reason why I don't go on murderous rampages, in case you didn't know, in case you weren't aware, is because I believe in God. True belief provides a true moral ethic and framework to me. There are lots of things that I would like to do for temporary emotional satisfaction that I do not do, that I refrain from doing because of God. And God has those rules because of the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, 10th, 100th order consequences. You just don't understand them. And that's how I came to God, as I began to start to understanding those consequences, or how I returned, if I could put it that way. Anyways, guys, I'm going to leave it there. I don't have anything particularly insightful to say. I've already said so much today. Running my mouth for 3 hours, man, all by myself. But hey, guys, I'll try and continue to make cuts from my videos and get them up. I do want to talk about Baudrillard very specifically. I'm no expert on Baudrillard, but I'm quickly trying to become one with whatever time I have. And I do think that this idea, it's not just an idea. It's more than an idea. It's the reality. This reality of hyper reality of the manufactured consensus, the synthetic society that we live in, is very powerful, and it needs to continue to be pushed out there. People say it all the time. We live in a simulation. We live in the matrix, you know, and we live in a clown world. Those are all references to that. Do I think that Baudrillard is some genius who came up with some unique idea? No, I don't actually at all. I think that he is just pointing out something that's quite fair and obvious. And in fact, some of the things that he has to say are quite reprehensible, in my opinion. But he gets it right on that. And we'll get into the details of that more either later this week or hopefully next week. So until then, guys, you know, this has been All Minus One. My name is Bill, and I wish you all well.
left are pedos, the 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 left are pedos, pedo. That's all people should hear when they think of left-wing politics. And there's so many examples of this.